Get you on Skype there in just a few minutes.
Okay, so 5 minutes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of the Global Reality right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. Give me just 1 second here, folks. Let me reboot my mixer real quick. Hold on 1 second. All right, there we go. Thank you so much for being with us today for the broadcast. Flying by the seat of our pants as we usually are here, right here at the last second. We're glad you can be with us for this Tuesday edition. Wednesday, rather. You know what freaking day it is. Wednesday, January 7, 2009. Going to be coming to you live for the next 4 hours, and we are scheduled to have none other than Mr. Michael Tsarion with us today on the broadcast, and I just got off the phone with him barely, as you might have even heard him out over the air. I don't know if you did. Actually just got off the phone with him. He's got to, this is how close to airtime we take this stuff. And he's got to reboot his computer and get his Skype loaded up, and he'll be joining us here in about 5 minutes. So as soon as he gets it all going, we'll get him on, and we'll have him on with us today for the show. We're going to be talking about his new DVD, The Architect of Control, Volume 1. You can get that at michaeltsarion.com. And that we're going to be talking. It's a great DVD. I really like it just because, and you'll hear me say the same things again once we get him on here in a minute. But I really like it because, I think it's very hard to bridge the gap between information that can appeal to people that, have been involved in this kind of research for a long amount of time, and, information that's good for beginners. I think it's very hard to do, and I think that's exactly what this film has done effectively. Is it really bridges that gap between there is actually architectsofcontrol.com. Well, see, I didn't even know that. Glad you told me that before I get the guest on here. But it's just amazing because it's almost, most of the, if you've ever seen most of the other Tsarion films out there, it's mostly him giving a presentation. This is a little different than that. It's him just talking about information, and then there's a audio and visual presentation that goes along with it. It's a unique way to make a film, I think, and he made it, of course, with the Red Ice Creation team out of Sweden. So, very interesting stuff. I think we're just about 2 more minutes here, and we'll get Michael added into the conference here on the Skype. So, oh, you heard us hang up and say 5 minutes. Okay, we were cutting it close. Yeah, I knew we were cutting it close. I didn't know how much was going out over the air, or how much it was. I knew we were cutting it real close because I could hear the intro playing. So I knew we were going to get it real close. But so it's about. I don't know how long we're going to have him on with us today. As long as I'll keep him. He's generally a trooper, and he'll generally stay with us at least 2-3 hours. So I don't know if we're going to open up the phone lines and take phone calls or not. A lot of times I don't like to do that because it opens up the floodgates for all sorts of weirdos and crazies to call in and ask the stupidest questions, and it usually wastes time for other people that want to ask serious questions. I don't know if we'll do that. I really just want to stick to the information, but if you're in the chat room, I'll do my best to field the questions, any questions you have to Michael, if I can, out of the chat room, or as well, if you want to email me any questions at globalrealityshow@gmail.com. That's globalrealityshow@gmail.com. I'll do my best to see if I can get some of those slid in there as well. Let's see if we can get Michael added into the conversation here. Just one second. Live radio, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Hey, Josh.
Michael, you with us?
Can you hear me?
All right, yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, we're joined today another live radio here. We do this connection here live on the air, so here you go. And joining us now from the new DVD, Architects of Control. You can get that, Architects of Control DVD.com is the website, as well as MichaelTsarion.com. None other than Mr. Michael Tsarion. Michael, thank you so much for coming on with us today, my friend.
Oh, absolutely, Josh. Thanks for the invitation. It's nice to be back with you.
Oh, absolutely. And, we've had you up 3 or 4 times, and it's just always an honor and pleasure to have you with us, and it's always very interesting. And, of course, my audience is chomping at the bit to have you on, so people are all excited there in our chat room at oraclebroadcasting.com. This DVD, I would tell you, just kind of prefacing it before we connected, and I mentioned this to you in the email that I sent before we were getting ready to do this show. One of the interesting things I think about this DVD, Michael, is the fact that it's just amazing, as a filmmaker myself and as a researcher and everything, one of the things that's hard to do is to bridge the gap for people of all levels of understanding. And that's one of the things I think that often people are really challenged with, is finding a way to, because people are on various levels of understanding. The biggest disagreements I see with people, Michael, is people that are on various levels of understanding arguing with each other. And your film really bridges that gap between something for people that have been involved in this stuff for, decades in some cases, can really be informed, but even people that are brought to a new level. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, that was intentional, especially since this is the first of, a series of Architects of Control, and since it stylistically was also very different. I thought that what was the point of diving headfirst into some, again, esoteric? I have done that in the Origins and Oracles series, which again was a good balance. There's a lot of different DVDs in that. It's a 6-box set, so it has everything from weapons of mass destruction, weapons of mass deception, all the way up to, the subversive use of symbolism and Atlantis, and a lot of good, heavy, esoteric stuff there, as well as a lot of stuff for beginners. But we thought, Henrik and I was definitely sat down and thought that, look, and I'm sure, Josh, this is the same for you, that look at all the emails we've been getting from people in the last, for me it's, about 8 years now. And certainly since I've been working, with, say, Henrik on 1 or 2 projects, it's about 3 years. And every email we get, every communique we get, every, and this is individually even, like he on his show, or me, individually talking to people, or seeing people, especially like we were at the, we went to a conference, in May of 2008, and had an opportunity to meet about 300 people who turned up at that conference. And it's so much the same idea, is that a lot of people are coming to this for the first time. You meet a few people who are very seasoned in this, like they've really studied, they've really read, and they're pursuing some sort of maybe theory of their own, like maybe working up to a blog or a website, not even as advanced, say, for instance, as like yourself, with a whole radio show and everything like that. But these are people who may be working up slowly towards a blog or a website, or maybe even doing a little, YouTube, upload or something like that, and maybe even working up slowly to a book or something like that. But the vast majority of people are decent, good people, hardworking people who are coming to this kind of esoteric or even, let's say, alternative, subject matter for really the first time. Some of the emails I get are from people who've been into this, and the first line will say, hey man, I just found out about your stuff. I've just checked out your stuff on YouTube. I've been into this for about 2 weeks. Hey, I've been studying this on and off for about a year or whatever, So again, very short time, not familiar with a lot of different areas. So this was very much on our mind when we sat down and did this. And I personally, Josh, wanted to basically do the first Architects of Control as a tribute to Jim Keith, who was one of the first people that I had got into, who made my skin crawl when I read his work. When I was into studying way back, in the 90s and reading all of this kind of material, a lot of it was very informative. But when I sat down and read Jim Keith, it was like, shockwaves up your spine of almost like horror, about what is really going on behind the scenes. And in fact, I remember one time I had the book, and I used to take the bus a lot in the Bay Area, so this book was everywhere with me, and I was waiting for a friend in front of the police station in Burlingame, and I sat there and I was reading some of these chapters about from Jim Keith's book about Dr. Cameron and Dr. Delgado and MK Ultra. And I'm telling you, when my friend came and met me, they couldn't believe the look of my face, eyes. They were saying, what the hell's wrong with you? You look like you've, seen a ghost or something. Are you okay? And I was like stunned, I was reading this book, and my whole body was like trembling, with the kind of information that Jim Keith was imparting. And so his work, for me, had really towered above a lot of the other work. And of course, there's many other books like that. His colleagues, people like, Ken Thomas and Jerry E. Smith, you see, have gone on to also talk about entrainment and to talk about HARP and to talk about the radiotronic assault upon our consciousness. So I really wanted to do that. I really wanted to say, look, I'd really love to get a lot of Jim Keith, as much as we can of Jim Keith. But then as soon as we start getting into Jim Keith, it turned out that, we bring up Alex Constantine, who again is into mind control. We bring out a little, of Ted Gunderson, who's a personal friend, who has been tracking the whole satanic networks and mind control networks. Then we, of course, move from that on to Camp, who's a friend of Ted Gunderson, you see. So one thing just led to another. And I was very satisfied. I have to tell you that it was a personal triumph for me to be able to, do something that really introduced other people, my readers, my watchers, to the work of Jim Keith as I had been exposed to him, and how my life had so dramatically changed by being into his incredible information. And of course, we know that he was actually, he died. He went in to have surgery for a very minor operation. I think it was a surfing accident.
Yeah.
And never came out alive, so he's a great loss.
Yeah, he told everybody, look, I'm not going to come back out from this. I mean, he literally told people, no, I'm not going to come back. Right.
He told people. We were, you know what happened at Liverpool also? At the conference we had in May. He was, I was like one of the guest speakers there, and Jerry E. Smith and Ken Thomas were there. They're old friends from, doing conferences, right. And they were very welcoming to me when I came in America. But we go to Liverpool, and it was just great because they were there. So I had breakfast with Jerry again every morning, at the hotel before we went to the conference. And boy, you can bet what all my questions was about. I badger the guy to death about Jim. And tell me this about Jim, tell me that about Jim, what was he really like, and did you guys go surfing and listen to rock and roll, and he'd tell me the whole, all the stuff about Jim, and such an incredible man that one side of him was so, into music and so easygoing, and yet at the other side he was one of the greatest researchers we've ever known, and that kind of, I patterned my own self, after that a little bit, that, you have your feet on the ground and you're just an ordinary person, but at the same time, you can show a tremendous interest in these other subjects. So he was always a hero for me, and it's good to be able to pick the brain of people like Ken Thomas from Steam Shovel Press and Jerry Smith, and Jerry has written some great books on HARP that I highly recommend. So again, and then I asked them that question that you just said, and they said absolutely. He had said publicly that he probably, was in danger. The question was that he maybe should have even gone to a private vet or a private, anybody to stitch you up. Yeah. But don't go to these men in white. So that's, again, we do this in the DVD. We talk about the men in white. We talk about the danger of these, hospitals and these Templar-controlled, hostels and hospices, and even hotel, even the word hotel, where does that come from? The ancient Order of St. John of Hospitallers, who were the first people to dress in white They put their nuns, the women who looked after the sick, were in white. These were the peddlers of all sorts of concoctions and drugs. And in the 13th and 14th century, these guys were up to no good. They are on paper as being the charitable ones, the ones who opened the hospices, the ones who opened the hotels, the ones who opened the tax-exempt, because we know anyway the Knights Templar were tax-exempt. So they are on paper as being, the most wonderful philanthropists. Just today, like we have the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and Dodds and, and Dodges and all of these other characters who claim to be the great philanthropists of the world. Hey, nothing has changed. Back then, the Knights Templars, the men in white, were the tax-exempt for a start. And they were on paper as being the ones who were going to take care of all the lepers and all the wounded and all the ne'er-do-wells. You see, this was, we're going to clean up the streets of medieval Europe. And, of course, they did. They built these hospitals, they built these hospices, and they built these hotels. That's where the words come from. And the symbols that used to be on a lot of these doors, the fact that weary travelers, you see, or people who had ailments, people who had leprosy, people who had cancers and diseases, alcoholics, all sorts of wounded and terribly malnourished people would end up at these, institutions that were created by the Knights Templar. But the fact of the matter is that these organizations were not just simply charitable. They were experimental. We couldn't have a medical edifice today. We couldn't have a pharmaceutical monopoly today. We couldn't have a pedal poisoning, secret operations, government institutions who used poison to get rid of people they don't like. We couldn't have any of these assassination operations and all of this kind of pharmacopoeia without the Knights Templar. And of course, who were these patients? These patients were the ones.
Take a break and come back. This is the Global Reality right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. Joining us today is Michael Tsarion, folks. Stay with us. Back here with you on the Global Reality on this Wednesday edition of the show. Joining us today is none other than Mr. Michael Tsarion. His new DVD is The Architects of Control, Volume 1, 2 DVD set, and that's what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about other things as well, but I got to tell you, folks, as we were talking here in this segment, this is such an effective tool because it's one of those things where, it's just great for everybody all around. As Michael described earlier in the broadcast, it was great for him to be able to do tributes to his heroes, and you really can see that on the screen when you're watching this because, I remember we were watching this with some friends when Michael first sent it to me. We're watching this thing for 40 minutes, and we thought we'd been watching the DVD for 2 hours because there was that much information packed in such a short period of time. Michael, before the break, we were talking about the control of the medical industry, how this goes back, back to the Templars, back to the Hospitallers. It's very interesting that it's always the ones who are in control of the magic, as it were, that always seem to be the philanthropists, aren't they?
It is true, you see, and again, don't forget, let's go back to our thing about the beginners. You try talking about this over a few pints or something, or down at the local, whatever, or even at a lot of, conferences or certainly amongst your friends, and we know this, don't we, from the people who've been emailing us. Because one thing about those beginners is that they have the passion to be doing just that. I wanted to create something for these people to arm them up with the information so that they don't look like a bunch of chumps when they start trying to bring this up. I've always talked about eloquence, and I've always talked about being armed up with the information. And that's not just because, there's no reason behind that. There's a very good reason behind that. Because we got a wall of people out there, a world full of people, we're incredibly defensive about this information, so when the younger generation or when anyone who gets into this information tries to bring up some of these points and tries to warn their friends, tries to educate their friends, they're received with, with paranoia and with people with very defensiveness, with a lot of accusation. So it was important to bring up Jim Keith's work and to bring up these anecdotes about the medical, particularly, and we have great information in there that people need to follow up. We've got the sources at the end of the DVD, as you saw. And we have a smorgasbord of different teachers that are into this because this has been documented. There is nothing that we say in any of our work that is not documented, that is not, referenced, and that people cannot follow up because it can be a matter of life and death for people. It is a matter of life and death for people. It's also a matter of being, potentially impoverished, the amount of money that these people charge and what they're up to, the kind of cocktails of vaccinations that they're giving to people. This is still, alive in our world. We got the Bayer controversy. We've got all sorts of, estrogen controversies, the kind of drugs that they're putting out there, especially on American TV, as you well know. It's absolutely epidemic, the amount of stuff that they're, the bad food, and then followed by the commercials that have to do with the medications. So we are going to be not only a remotely controlled generation, but we are a intoxicated and medicated generation. And there's even punks now from Stanford who want to be using the ADD type of medication for children before they even show the symptoms of any kind of malfunction in their consciousness or in their behavior. Meaning in vitro, at birth. I mean, what kind of monsters are we living with? Not people who are interested in educating us and turning us on spiritually or intellectually. No, but injecting our mothers and injecting the fetuses and injecting the newborn before they've even shown what kind of a human being they are. They're already going to be medicated in some hideous, Fabian experimentation. This is absolutely real. This is going to be happening to your children in the future if we don't watch out. So again, expose who these people are, show them what kind of perfidious creatures they are, and so that people can make better choices about who they go to and put their health care in, you see, and hopefully steer people more towards balancing allopathic medicine with homeopathic medicine and subject matter like that. But again, going back to the idea of the beginner, is that the beginner is lost. The beginner comes into all of this information, they have a passion for it, they love it, but unfortunately there's a welter of different teachers out there. Not all the information is correct, and so they don't know where to start. And this is the kind of emails that I get, because I am in the public, I have a public forum, you see, so I'm available. People email me all the time with their concerns. And this is what I started to see as we were researching the Architects of Control series. And so, we didn't know about the second and the third one, but when it came to the decision about the first one, it was unanimous that we've got to do this so that we are not just preaching to the choir. We have something there that is, very, very appetizing for everyone else. For somebody who maybe this is the very first introduction, say, and we'll put enough teachers in there, and we'll put enough, great people in there, like the Alex Constantines and like the Jim Keats, so that people will have plenty to go on with.
Well, I think it's very important that you hit on that, Michael, because that's something that we stress here on this show quite a bit, is the fact that don't think just because you're coming into a new paradigm or you're coming into a new level of understanding that there aren't traps and gatekeepers and everything else waiting for you in this new awake paradigm, because there's lots of that, and people fall into those traps because, as you said, they just don't know any better. They're hungry for this. They want the information, so they tend to go down rabbit holes and things that lead them down these trails that don't really lead them to the truth. And that's one of the things that we have to effectively do, and that we try to do here with the show, and what I try to do with my films, is to use these tools that they've used to enslave us, and use it to unenslave the masses. And that, to me, is the underlying thing of Architects of Control, because you show all these examples from Hollywood movies going back, 50 years of Hollywood movies here, and it ties right into the information. And this is something where a beginner's going to come in and go, oh, wait a second, this guy isn't just getting on here telling me his opinion or trying to make me believe something. He's giving me information, and he's showing me how Hollywood is manipulated as well. I think, Michael, that's something that nobody's ever done before, that's very, very subtle, that I think is going to wake a lot of people up.
Well, we have now, not only do we have the normal barrage of information in the alternative research community. That's, pretty daunting on its own. But as you hinted, we also have the whole internet assassin game going. We've got debunkers. We've got debunkers of debunkers. We've got the debunkers of the debunkers of the debunkers. See, if I was a beginner now getting into this stuff, I would just be, just going crazy. I would just go, what on earth is this? It would be a filtration process. Not that the filtration process is bad. I mean, you're going to have to do that. Right. But let's make it easier somewhat. One of my literary heroes, Khalil Gibran, he said that the teacher does two things on the path, or let's say the seeker. It does two things on the path of enlightenment. When he himself reaches a block, say there's a big blockage in the road somewhere, or a forest of thorns, or a cave-in or something like that, he says, he asks the question, haven't other guys gone ahead of me on this mountain path, this mountainous, torturous path, this steep ascent? What the hell were they thinking not to remove this blockage for the people coming behind me? And now that I have encountered this blockage, I will remove it for the ones following me. Now, this never left my mind, even from the time that I was like 15 studying this. It really rang out that there are blockages on the path, and we don't just skip round them and dalliance and head on up the path, all self-possessed. It's our job to remove, if we can, or at least put a signpost for the pitfalls that possibly will, be met by those coming after us. I am very concerned about that. I'm not concerned about chasing down debunkers and getting into wasting energy with all of these internet assassins and all the other people that, have completely irresponsible critiques. First of all, these people are not critics. They're just accusers.
Stay right
so why
there,
would I waste my energy with them?
Michael Tsarion, folks, stay with us. Back here with you on the Global Reality on this Wednesday edition of the broadcast. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. I want to thank you so much for being with us today for the show. Lots more to talk about and discuss here with our guest today, Michael Tsarion. You get his new DVD, The Architects of Control, Volume 1 today. You can get that at michaeltsarion.com as well as architectsofcontrol.com. And, one of the things that Michael's talking about here is really, very important because as you're talking about the beginners and the people that come in new to this, oftentimes, with what we do here with our show, sometimes you get people that sort of get left behind. You start talking about some of the ancient information going back to ancient societies. You're going back to Lemuria and Samaria and Babylon. We start getting to that. And sometimes people go, whoa, wait a second, how did we get to this point? So I think that's important, Michael, to have things there for all levels. But, one of the things that I find interesting about this film is sort of the underlying thing, and I want to get into this and get into, because this is going to lead us into an extensive discussion, I know, but because it's very intensive. But one of the things I want to get into is, I'm seeing it even now, even since this DVD has been made, we're already seeing this idea, and we're seeing it over and over again. And it doesn't, even in the realm and scope of the alternative research community, folks, you see this happen. But this idea, Michael, of what you get rid of being replaced by something that is 100 times worse than what you saw. People crying about the Bush administration, and now here comes Barack Obama, and I've had 3 stories a day now with the title "New World Order" in it. Barack Obama and the New World Order. I mean, every day we have these stories. And so, could you speak to the audience, Michael, about how about replacing this idea of replacing something? We got to get rid of this bad tyranny, and here comes something even worse in the back door.
Well, this is the old good cop, bad cop scenario that has been used, all the time. It's a very common motif. They don't change their strategies. The fact that we only have 2 parties, of course we know it's all controlled from higher up, but say you didn't know that. The very fact that you even have only 2 parties, what kind of choice is that? People have been even conditioned into believing that is in fact some kind of choice. If somebody gave me 2 of anything at a bakery, or at a cinema, or if I went to get my car fixed, or I wanted to buy a car, or whatever, 2 choices, I'd be thinking I was living in communist Russia or something like that. So I wouldn't even say that we've been even having a great deal of choice in the first place. People need to wake up to that. And then secondly, they need to take a next step and realize that even the parties that you've got are controlled from higher up. So these people are quite capable. This is in fact a kind of tyranny. It's certainly not any type of constitutional democracy. It's not any kind of republican, republic that America was meant to have. So people need to do their homework on that and find out what is the difference between state control and government control. What are the difference between rules as opposed to laws? If somebody quotes you laws and quotes you rules, those maybe are not exactly the same kind of thing, and all of the above. And just simply in context of what you've said, you can take the rugged, war-torn, harsh, sun-beaten desert crossing to hell, or you can take the scenic route to hell. And so the present president, so-called, is merely doing that. He's just another Pied Piper, but sometimes they, toot the horn and say, listen, I'll take you on a scenic route to destruction, to world government, to global village. Jump on. The magic bus is here. And then, before and again after, we'll have another guy who says, no, arm up, tighten your belts. We had this in England with Margaret Thatcher, you see. Again, tightening the belts, life is hard, stress is upon us. Take it back to the 1950s, and then before that into the war years, and you'll have the same pattern of good cop, bad cop, the punitive versus the permissive, which is what I talked about in one of the live talks that I did, where I spoke about how the psychology of man is what is behind all of this, that man has an ego that has 2 kinds of dimensions to it, that there's 2 kinds of drives, the permissive and the prohibitive, which is what we embody from our parents, and this is very important. And then when we take that down to the political level, we also find it there. It's manifested in this democratic versus Republican sort of dynamic, which is all based on the psychology of man. This is how they are able to control us. That's why they only need two parties, because you only have these two major, dynamics or complexes within consciousness when a child is born. To make it simple, one of the parents is more permissive with us and lets us basically get away with anything we want to do, and traditionally one of the other parents is prohibitive. In the Victorian era, when Freud came up with these ideas, it was always the father, you see, that was prohibitive. Of course, we know that that needs to be updated. It wasn't that he was wrong, as many people say. It's just that he was talking about the era in which he lived. And today, it might even be the mother, you see, who's the most prohibitive, and the father who's often the most permissive. But those are minor points. The fact of the matter is that within us, even if we don't have parents, or we have a single-parent family, we do have a thing called conscience. And the conscience is divided into these two aspects. This is how we get our understanding of what is good and what is bad. This is how we get our concept of how it is to act morally and how not to act morally. This is also a problem when you find that it is impeded. This is one of the reasons that creates criminals, is because something in their circuitry of the conscience is off, and this is how you get people who are, of a criminalistic bent, and so on. So it's not a perfect setting. But the government and the people behind the government are absolutely up to par and up to speed on all of these psychological dynamics. That's why they downplay true psychology in society. They don't want you reading it. They don't really want the average person studying it. They don't mind if you have a sort of a Dr. Phil level to do a sort of a spring cleaning on some of the surface rubbish that accumulates. But they certainly don't want you going into the depth of it to discover who you are, what is thinking, what is man, what is the meaning of life, and all of these things. So in the DVDs, we also wanted to go into that. We bring up a lot of psychology. I'm sure you saw that. That in the Architects of Control, we bring up a lot of these anecdotes regarding psychology, so that if we're talking about mind control, it is not, or we're talking about mass control and mind control, it's not a situation in which Henrik and I are like pointing fingers at just them. We're trying to show you how the roots of this tyranny lie inside the self.
Well, that's one of the biggest threats, I think, to their control anyway. Is reality reprogramming, and that's essentially what our work amounts to, Michael. Is reprogramming reality into people because they've been programmed with this. The human body and the mind is a shell. It's wide open to this stuff, and if people don't even know, that's a problem. People always talk to me and say, "Well, what's the solution? What's the solution?" We talk about what's going on and what they're doing, but what's the solution? Well, you want the solution. Well, how about looking around you and finding out that none of these people in the rest of the world around you even know there's a problem, Michael?
That's
I mean, they don't even know.
That's great. And that goes back to the why should they know there's a problem? They've been entertained to death, Josh.
Yeah.
They've been given Paris Hilton and every other kind of basketballing, and not that any entertainment or sport is wrong in itself. It's how much people are immersed into it. And it's the barrage, you see. So of course they don't know there's a problem. Believe me, I've sat in cars with people. I've all through my life, I do not bring up what I do in my work or my studies with people I meet generally. That's not what I do. But there have been some, gray areas in which the person already knows a kind of bit of what I'm doing before and after I meet them. So then inevitably these topics come up. And you dare talk about injustice. And you'll get the inevitable wide-eyed look going, what injustice? Well, where the hell do we start? It's crazy,
They don't even have a clue there's any problem. We're coming on a break here again in just a second, so I want to stop right there. We'll get back into this. We'll take a break. When we come back, we're going to get more into this idea of again, people don't even know there's an issue here. People don't, what problem? The house is on fire? What? I don't see a fire here. So that's one of the things. Again, we can have solutions 7 ways to Sunday, folks. But if we don't have people awake, it's not going to do a bit of good. Michael Tsarion joins us today, folks. The Architects of Control, Volume 1 is out now. Go to architectsofcontrol.com and get it. More on the other side. This is the Global Reality. Stay with us. Back here with you on the Global Reality on this Wednesday edition of the broadcast. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you so much for being with us today. Michael Tsarion joins us, and we're getting into so much information to talk about. But, I want to get back into what we were talking about before the break. This idea that the house is on fire and every person in the world doesn't even know there's a fire. They're looking around and going, look, everything's fine here. I don't know what you're talking about. Everything's fine, but everything certainly is not fine. And once you give somebody that little bit of a toehold, it takes one issue. That's the thing, Michael, is that I find that everyone has that one hot issue, and your film has 2,000 hot issues in it. But, if you find one of those things that you can get sort of an inroad with someone, you've got them. And I think that's one of the things important, and I think people that, are trying to attempt to just, shake people out of their slumber need to know.
Well, that's right. Frank Herbert, the author of Dune, he said, a web is not created with one thread. And that's my philosophy, is that the sorcery that's going on in the world is not just, hasn't got only one spell working. These guys are not just one spell wonders, They've got a whole, truckload of different devices and designs to keep a person in ignorance, in chronic defensiveness, and most importantly, in a state of perpetual collectivism and altruism and non-selfhood. So again, we talk about the two roots of mass control, and that is that there is an overt campaign of active suppression in the world that people need to wake up and realize is going on. And then they need to be self-aware to realize what it is within them that allows them to be creatures who will submit to any kind of tyranny, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's at work, in the daily life, you see, and then further up the ladder when it comes to political control. So there's a lot of different things, and we thought that these were pretty much perfect subjects to get into from an introductory point of view. But when you do that, you find out that by going over the basics, or what appear to be basics, or what appears to be the introductory stuff, that there's a great wisdom in there, even for those who, think they know a lot about this subject matter. There's never any harm, you see, in reviewing what you know, starting from scratch and going back and backtracking and finding out the things you may have overlooked as you hurried along in this subject matter, dealing with the basics of this thing and this whole war on consciousness,
Well, absolutely. That was one of the main things about it to me when I was watching it. It was all these things that I'd already found in my research that was going, oh, wait a second, though, see, you missed that. And you thought you knew about that, but yet did you know that this war on consciousness is not something that is just going on in the the technotronic era or the electronic era where now we've got all this brain training? No. This has been going on for centuries, since the dawn of time, and the manipulation tools have changed. So that was one of the things for me, Michael, was looking at it going, okay, and I know about the modern day stuff because, of course, that's what I research, that's what I'm looking at. But, do you know how far this goes back? Do you know how far this has been going on?
Exactly, and even the clip that we have with Jim Keith himself, he mentioned that the tools are just different, but the intention is age-old. The tools of television and so forth, and some of the high-tech weaponry that they've got, that all may be new, but they didn't just dream up mass control, since the discovery of America or, since the First and Second World War. This is a very ancient thing that has many, many tentacles. It involves the drug cults of the world. It involves the cult of Dionysus. It involves the, different entertainment cults that we've got today. And we've got to ask questions about who these people's champions that, are put up in the media, even on sitcoms and even on music videos and any of these, sort of Bono, Geldof types, and they always have a new slew of these people, you see, for every new generation that comes up. They've always a new bunch of these people's champions to be the wolf in sheep's clothing. I must add also, I don't know if we brought it up in the actual DVD itself, but I certainly have in other presentations, the symbol, the very emblem of the Fabian Society. This is a group that basically is very much behind the Tavistock Institute, and they're behind the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, and they basically pull the reins of what goes down in America. This Fabian organization is very rich and very powerful. Their emblem is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yes.
And one of the other, isn't it amazing? And one of the other emblems that they use is the globe of the earth being beaten into shape. A couple of guys, or one guy with a giant, sledgehammer. It's actually a hammer very similar to the one that was on the old Soviet flag. That kind of gavel type of implement. And they're beating the earth into shape. And so anyone who's studied the global village concept can tell you that that's exactly what these people are doing. Do you remember the clips in the DVD that we had from the Prisoner series, the British series with Patrick McGowan?
Patrick McGowan, yeah, that was a great show.
Right, and we have a couple of clips in the DVD from those very, very special and important clips, which also show this Do you remember the clip that we had that show exactly how the two-party system works? That they actually have him. He's the most militant, and he's the one who wants to get out of the village, and he would be a rebel. But they actually co-opt him into trying to run for political office, and they actually encourage him to run against them.
I mean, they tell you right there it's in black and white. You know, it doesn't take someone like yourself or myself to decode it. It's right there, people.
It's either, as we said about the scenic route, it's either more work, less play from one candidate, and less play, more work from candidate B. And this is how it proceeds down through the centuries. More work, less play. No, less play, more work. And this is how it goes. And, you know, unfortunately, the historical amnesia, like you said, the fact that people have not researched any of this, don't know what's going on, you know, and they're being robbed blind. You know, you have burglars coming in. It's like I've always described it as being derelicts in the mansion. You know, they're urinating behind the staircase. They're lounging on the master's leather. They're drinking from his brandy. They're trying on his tuxedos, you know, while the master's away. And this is unfortunately what we have right now. We've got the most dirty, toxic, reprehensible, you know, evil people in the place where the greats should be. And I've had many conversations with various even Masons, you know, who contact me, and we have conversations with them. And they're wanting to know what my beef is, or they're, you know, saying, you know, tell me more. And, you know, the same thing comes up as I say, look, I understand why you're you know, contacting me and so forth and so on. My point is this. If good moral people, good moral men, be they Masons or not, were to take care of the levels of criminality and hypocrisy and manipulation and suppression that go on within Masonry, then myself and Josh Reeves and anyone else who's, you know, got a megaphone on this wouldn't need to do it. If you guys would handle the kinds of corrupt souls, and they're not Masons, they're men. It's men that makes Masonry, not Masonry that makes men. If you were able to deal with some of these tyrannical aspects within your own lodges, then we wouldn't have a bother whether Masonry existed or not. And since you're not capable of doing it, and since the evidence is that you don't want to do it, then do not have a problem with the people, the Michael Tsarions, who are outside trying to do it in their own way from the outside. That's just the bottom line. We will be doing this. We will be trying to, you know, call people to order on this matter and let them know about what's going on, because that is the right of all human beings to point out injustice, just like it is for any doctor to point out the danger of infection. And if you're not going to do it from within the lodges, and you go along with the status quo and you submit to these elites, because again, I'm not implicating ordinary street-level Freemasons here, but if you're not going to refurbish and you're not going to sanitize, you know, what's going on within these orders, then do not come whining and having a problem, you see, with anyone who's attempting to do that job from the outside. Whether or not they're successful or not is a separate question. Yeah, it's not the knowledge itself. When we stress that here on the broadcast all the time, it's not the knowledge itself that's corrupted or evil or anything else. It is the hands of the user it falls in. We're coming on break here again. Big segment around the second hour of the broadcast. I want to talk more about this, and I want to mention, I have a comment about the Fabian socialist movement that I want to make to Michael as well. This is The Global Reality, folks. Joining us today, Michael Tsarion, The Architects of Control, Volume 1 is out now. Go get the DVD today. Stay with us. Second hour of this Wednesday edition of The Global Reality right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. We're joined by Michael Tsarion. ArchitectsOfControl.com is the website. You can go get the new DVD there today, and I tell you what, just a wealth of information and something that, you know, you need to see. Look, here's the thing you got to understand about this DVD, folks. You know, you can show people, you know, any other DVD out there, any other film out there, and you may or may not get a response out of them. But the thing about this film is that I've found is that this film doesn't require the person who's watching it to even have any knowledge or any, you know, even know that any of this stuff even exists. I mean, this film gets right to the heart of people, and it really entrains people from the very beginning. It makes them go, oh, whoa, wait a second. And that's the thing is most films that are out there make people, well, I don't know about this stuff. I don't know. But when people watch this film, they immediately, they're paying attention because it doesn't sort of, it's not pushing someone's agenda on you. It's not pushing someone's mindset on you. It's simply showing you what is, and then it's up to you to go from there and make your decision. And I love that free will aspect of it. You know, that's what we talk about here on the show, is the free will aspect of information. You know, it's up to you to make the decision to walk down the path. No one can make you walk down it yourself. And one of the things I want to go, you mentioned the Fabian socialists, and we talked about this last time you were on the show. And that's, you know, in my work and what I'm doing with this film, and we're almost done with it, and I'm certainly going to send you a copy, Michael, once it's done here in about a month or so. But
one of the things I found is I'm exposing this group called the Council for National Policy, which is a very secretive right-wing group that has ties to the Vatican and the military-industrial complex here in the States. And going back, finding out, lo and behold, the origins of this group lie in the Milner's Round Table, the Milner's Kindergarten, the Fabian Socialist Movement, the Cliveden Set, and they formed groups like the World Anti-Communist League, the Western Goals Foundation, and of course the Council for National Policy. So it's not your opinion, it's not my opinion. These people have created every movement on both sides of the political spectrum. That was what they did in forming this group, the Council for National Policy. Was they were able to ensure that you get socialism, whether it be on the left or on the right. And people need to understand that when you go back and you look further into that, it's the same priest class minions, Michael, as it always is. Michael, are you with us?
Sorry, yeah, I'm with you now. I heard that. Yes, and this goes back even to the situation with Nazi Germany. The Nazi Party was split. They weren't all just one cohesive group, you see, that had all the same beliefs. There was a core group of Hitler and some of the other guys who absolutely knew that they weren't really opposed to communism at all. They were in on the agenda, and they knew that they had to stay in very good connection with the Vatican and with the different cardinals, you see, and the different bishops. They knew they wanted to stay there. On the surface, it appears that Hitler was all for paganism and for all of that, and that wasn't the case. And we know this because if you study the letters between Hitler and, say, for instance, Alfred Rosenberg. Alfred Rosenberg was a writer. He was a member of the Nazi Party, but he was more of an ideologist who really did think in terms of, Germans for Germany and for the death of religion and for the destruction of the Vatican and, for the ending of the tyranny of religion and all of these kinds of things. And so you'll find that Hitler hated Rosenberg. So on paper they're, like all one party, but then you find in the letters and the communiques that Hitler said that the myth of the 20th century, which was Rosenberg's great book, was a bunch of gibberish that nobody could understand, and he despised Rosenberg for some of his beliefs. So then we find out, by studying these divisions, you discover what the real agenda was, and it's exactly right. The same thing you said about the Cliveden Set and the Tavistock and these Fabian organizations. The whole idea of the Round Table, of Cecil Rhodes' Round Table, was to have these concentric circles of control. This is what J. Edward Griffin and others have shown. And the other idea was to have it in wings. They knew that you must have a wing over here, because remember, you're dealing with trying to cage and to net all of the people of the world. And you have to base your philosophies and ideologies somewhat on the prejudices that people have. I don't think it goes any further than mapping the conscience, like I said before, which is only in two forms, the prohibitive and the permissive. It all boils down to basically to a primal duality that exists in the consciousness of man. And so you're not going to see too much more. You'll see some elaboration, but the core of it is always this two-winged, two-pronged dialectic that works. Then they find out that it does work, because you might have a left-wing party over here that is on paper left-wing, but how do you know that the controller of that left-wing party, like say a Neil Kinnock, who is now a lord, a sir, is not as right-wing behind the scenes as you can get. And over here on the right wing, you've got some sort of socialist guy that they put in, who's more Fabian, who'll drag them, back towards the center again. And this is how they do it. Because remember, as we said on so many shows before, and so many works, behind the lodge door, not only do the different religious divisions end, but certainly the political fragmentation and dichotomy ends. Maybe not on the first 3 degrees, but see, by the time that you've moved up to the level of Master Mason and up into the Knights Templar degrees and up into the Royal Arch degree, these things have very little matter. Because people understand it's so much wider and so much greater than that the real ship of state has very little to do with these political divisions. But those are very useful when you're in the process of controlling the human race and when you need recruits. Then you have to have a grading situation. You have to have a fraternal situation. You see, it's just like in the military. You can't bring in somebody from the streets and make him a field marshal right away. So it's expedient that you have these different degrees, starting with private, corporal, major, captain, and all the way up to level. But once you've actually matriculated to a certain level within these degrees, and when you start to get a vision on what really society is all about and how the control of the human mind really works, these divisions are immaterial. This is what my reading of it is anyway.
Well, absolutely, and that's the thing about you talk about the various degrees of going up in the degrees. I mean, they're designed. If you read them and you go through and you actually read the Masonic text and you read the degrees, one of the things that's very interesting about it is the way that the phraseology of the words, the way that they're rooted in Kabbalism, especially with say morals and dogma or something like that. I mean, it does make the subconscious mind of the person that's going through the degrees be opened up to control more and more as they gradually go. But so not only are they being controlled by the powers that be and the people that are above them in the pyramid, as it were, but also of these, outer forces. And I know that, Hitler has been said to have been, in contact with, since I had a question in the chat room, someone said something about Hitler being in control with in contact with the collective unconscious or something, and if you knew anything about that. But that is the thing, Michael, is that as they go gradually up these degrees, they're not even themselves anymore. They don't even know who they are. They don't even know that they're controlled by a hierarchy.
This is right. This is how the sorcery works at its top level. I've described this before in other works, and don't forget that when the Architects of Control DVD came out, I also released my Irish Origins DVD series. And in the book of the Irish Origins, in Volume 2, pretty much the first 3 chapters are this whole thing about the going up through the different ranks and how this thing called the promissory note, the idea of the promise, how man has been the bait of the promise of esoteric knowledge, the promise of power, the promise of wealth, the promise of enlightenment, whatever that is, has been always promised to these different bodies, all the way back to the time of Constantine, all the way back through the origins of Christianity and back beyond that. All of these fraternities do this. They have a fraternal system set up so that they keep promising. It's always around the next corner, and this people need to snap out of this, because this is the thing that is very enticing. The person who does not know that the great mystery is within, as the Christ said, as the great holy books and scriptures actually say that the temple of God is within. But the man who doesn't really understand that, the man who doesn't know what it means for himself to give meaning to the world, is sitting around waiting for the world to give him meaning, who's crying out for some sort of status in the status quo, who's crying out for his brethren to think he's just wonderful. And so that person is then going to be very enticed by these secret orders and secret lodges and secret aspects of religion, and he will progress in that way until he, in fact, becomes so selfless in the total meaning of the word that he's then the perfect creature to be possessed by some other dark sort of sorcery that exists up there, and I believe it does exist up there. And that's why I believe that even some of the child sacrifice and some of the other debauchery that is so ubiquitous behind the media and involved in these secret societies and what they get up to, that's been exposed by John DeCamp, that's been exposed by Ted Gunderson and many others, that kind of ritualism of getting you to compromise yourself, you see, through your sexuality or through some murder that you've committed or some sort of drug fit that you've gone through, or some bohemian society type of ritual, those are all done in order to compromise that individual to, again, have the control over his mind. Because if you control a man's mind, you control every aspect of his life, and he'll work wonders for you. This is the same in Nazi Germany and so on, and people need to study the Nazis. Don't go for what you've been told about this. Discover that these people were funded from Britain and from New York. Discover that the contradiction in Hitler's book, where he rants against all the aristocrats, and yet he's taking the money of the aristocrats behind everyone's back. His bankers were the greatest capitalists and aristocrats from New York City. Find out that his the men who put him in power came from those powerful Freemasonic societies in Germany, like the Thule Society and the Hermannenschaft Society and the German Order. And yet, on paper, they're telling you that they're closing down Freemason lodges. Yeah, they just don't want lower Freemasons operating autonomously, because they want to create a new, they're closing down the old Freemasonry, not because they're against Freemasonry, but because a new Freemasonry is in town, a new right-wing fascist Freemasonry with a different kind of iconography and with a different kind of power structure that's more up-to-date is taking over, and they don't want these mystics and metaphysicalness people and these old astrologer types you see, and more of the scholarly types who may have been part of German Freemasonry and European Freemasonry before 1934. They know that those guys won't buy into this new political Nazi trip. So what you do is you make Freemasonry illegally while you're setting up your own form of Freemasonry. The Catholic Church are always telling you it's forbidden for Catholics to form Freemasonry, while they're setting up Propaganda Due, P2, to be one of the most powerful secret societies coming out of Vatican City. So this is how the contradictions in work, and people need to be wary of this to realize that most of these people are members of secret societies. When it was forbidden for Catholics to join the Freemasons, and one pope would allow it, and one pope would then tighten up the rules, and one pope would slack off again, and then one pope would make it more difficult. You see, so it went back and forth, and Catholics didn't know what to do, and they wanted to join Masonry. They wanted to join some sort of fraternal order. And when any pope would sort of lighten up on the rules, the prohibitions, then Catholics joined Freemasonry en masse. But then another pope would come along and tighten up that thing. So the problem went on for centuries. And, you know, finally in 1896 or something, they suddenly decided, what are we doing? All we need to do is create our own Freemasonry. It's called the Knights of Columbus. We just create our own order. Catholics can join it en masse, and it's nothing but Freemasonry. It still obeys the same rules as any other Freemason lodge. My goodness, what have we been thinking with all of this back and forth and back and forth? Of course we know how to solve the problem now. We just create our own Freemasonry, and that's what you can do. You just don't say it's just not full of Protestants, but that doesn't mean it's any less Freemason. In fact, in Northern Ireland, where my studies began, I found out the strange contradiction that the Orange Lodge, which is meant to be completely Protestant, Josh, as you well know, in Ireland, the heavy-duty Orange Order, which is for Protestants up in Belfast, who are meant to be sworn anti-Republican, sworn against United Ireland, the head of their lodge, the Grand Lodge itself, the steering committee, is in Dublin. They'll always tell you, oh no, it doesn't matter where the building is, it's only Protestants that are there. No, 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 no. How can the capital, the Grand Lodge of Orange Masonry be in Dublin? If this isn't the yin-yang, why don't you just put the head of Southern Irish Freemasonry up in Belfast then and have done with it? But this is in fact how they work. And a deep study, people can read my article on the occult origins of Ireland, they'll see these notes mentioned, that when I didn't have to study very long before I found out that the whole thing is being played from above, that all of the Freemasons of Ireland are controlled in this way, that it's not about the green versus the orange at all, as many of the street level people think. This is an incredible setup in which most of the leaders of the early Republican movements and the early terrorist organizations of Ireland, like the IRA, are actually Freemasons, and they're controlled out of London.
And it's back to the same exact thing that we were talking about the last hour. It's back to the same old thing. Two things, psychology, and another thing that you've covered in your work, Michael, extensively, is the fact that trading off this old gig for the new gig and believing that the new gig is somehow different from the old, but it's not. And again, this is how society and people are manipulated, and this is how they retain their membership through the centuries. Come on, people.
And remember, the selfless man, what he doesn't realize, the man who's actually fallen for any of these promissory notes, whether it's in the business world, of course, it's probably not as severe in the business world. We're talking about, you know, lodges of Freemasonry here. It's a hell of a big difference when you're being promised spiritual enlightenment, not just, you know, a nice house and a good career. So it's slightly different. But the same idea goes that the man who has lost his selfhood and is working under a submissive way in order to gain some promissory note is also the most expendable creature you could imagine on the face of this planet. So this is why you have a lot of whistleblowers from within Freemasonry who, for some reason, one or another, reason, have been ousted. You know, their conduct was found unbecoming, or they found out too many secrets, or whatever. You know, we have a movie like The Brotherhood of the Bell that very much goes into this whole detail about how a person from inside can suddenly fall foul of the system and want to expose it or whatever. So we're grateful for those people who are trying to expose it. But my main point is that you're also you're dispensable. You're absolutely dispensable. They can replace you, and it doesn't matter how far up the ladder you are. So you think that this lodge affiliation and these secret handshakes and this palaver is going to help you in politics or help you in government or help you in business? You better realize that they've...
Back here with you on the Global Reality on this Wednesday edition of the broadcast. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. I want to thank you for being with us. Today, we're talking to Michael Tsarion today from his new DVD, The Architect of Control, Volume 1. Architectofcontrol.com is the website, and you can go there and get the DVD today. And I'll tell you what, it's one of those important things that's put out there. I think it's important that we put more things out in the palette of information to put out there for people to have access to, and this is definitely one of them. And it's such a well-made DVD with the Red Ice Creations team there, and you guys just did a heck of a job with the visuals. With the presentation, with everything else. It's, if you've never seen this film, you haven't seen it yet, you have to understand this is not the same type of gig as, one of Michael's previous DVDs or the Origins and Oracle series where it's Michael giving a presentation. This is him talking, and also with an audio and visual presentation that goes along with it, which makes it just for an unbelievable ride. But before the break, we were talking about this idea of people being expendable and people that, and you see this oftentimes, and you see this even down to from the upper echelons of Freemasonry, the upper echelons of the government and everything else. But you also see it down the lower level, things like the police department, Homeland Security, where people get involved in these groups. They think they're part of the elite. They think they're part of the mindset of, oh, well, I'm one of the good guys. No. They're going to be the first ones that get burned. If they tell you to go out and shoot civilians or something like, what we got going on in the Gaza right now, and you think you're part of the club, oh, no. You're going to be the first one they're going to burn. They're going to go, plausible deniability. They're going to ride out on a C-130 off on safety, but you're going to be the one that's going to go down.
Absolutely. This has been going on for many, many decades now. And so many figures, especially the whistleblower types, often they're the kind that, and I'm glad that it happens because, I rely on their material a lot. Their research is second to none. People from within inside, you see, who have come out to explain it, let's even take the Jack the Ripper, story, which can become so much of a fiasco. Yeah, but how many people know about Joseph Sickert? Joseph Sickert was one of the most famous artists in England, who was not only a member of the Freemasons, he was a member of he had access to the people who were in the Alpha Lodge, which is the supreme Masonry, if not in the world, certainly in Britain. And that's because it had the senior members of the royal family involved. Probably it's equally as high, the Alpha Lodge is equally as high as the Knights of the Garter and the Order of St. Michael and St. George, if not even more creme de la creme than that. So it's a very secret society. This Joseph Sickert was the insider who blew the whistle on the exact reasons for the famous Ripper murders and who Jack the Ripper was, named the names, explained what happened. It was actually, Walter Sickert who had access to the Masonry, and his son, Joseph Sickert, was the one who then began leaking the information to people like Stephen Knight and to other authors, you see. So, again, look at that. That's been a perennial interest. It's not only been a criminal investigation, it's been a worldwide interest in level on who and what was those terrible crimes. My goodness, what was going on there? Why the ritual elements? Well, you're not going to find that out from some journalist, no matter how great that journalist's work is. He's not going to get very far. He's certainly not going to be able to really crack the code. Nobody's going to believe him, even if he does. But an insider, people on the top of the class, very, very much, have great status. They write about it. They keep the diaries. They keep the memoirs, and then they leak that through their family members or whatever. And finally, it drips down to a credible author. Then we've got something that's really incredible. You see, and there's many other examples of this. There's examples of this even within the Irish context, and certainly within the American context. We've got the senators, and we've got the clergymen, and we've got the ex-Jesuits. We've got the elites like Avro Manhattan. So my work, very much focuses on what they have to say, people who were absolutely in on these decisions. Hasn't it been the same thing with the 9/11, where we have so many insiders who literally had access to the Oval Office and access to the White House and access to the CIA that then wrote the great books that we find, coming out, exposing all of what was really going on? I mean, so there you have it.
Yeah, it is always those type of people on the inside, and that's the whole thing about it is that they are able to manipulate people because of their allegiances to an ideology, Michael. And this is something that you often talk about, is the fact that what people are holding their allegiance to is an ideology. It's not even something that's even material you can even put your hand on, but it's just like, us here in America. I mean, we've been conditioned to be behind, the land of the free and the home of the brave, but it's conditioning us to an ideology. It's conditioning us to believe that we're free when we're not free. It's that illusion of freedom again, and I think this also plays in with this idea of the illusion of acceptance, the illusion of being a part of the team when you're no more a part of the team than the profane, as they refer to us as.
That's right. And the whole sorcery, hypnotism that happens to manipulate your allegiances. This is what's going on constantly through the television, like I was talking earlier about the Dr. Phil level. They don't want to give you the Jung. They don't want to give you the Freud. They don't want to give you the R.D. Laing. They don't want to give you the Carl Rogers. They don't want to give you the True McCoy. You see, they don't want to give you the Arno Gruens and the Eric Fromms. So what do? They give you Dr. Phil, so that they can always turn around and say, hey, don't blame us. You've got psychology. We gave it to you. So they put all of this watered down versions out there to satiate people a lot of the time. And you even get this in the conspiracy movement of the alternative research, where people who really don't know what they're talking about are blabbing on about symbolism, or blabbing on about masonry, or blabbing on about these different orgs and societies as if they know anything. And obviously they don't. Their knowledge is very superficial, but they got a bestseller out there somewhere. This is happening frequently now. It's going to be happening even more as the mainstream starts to co-opt some of the stuff that you and I and others have been into, where they find out that people are so interested in this. They're very, very curious now. They also know that something's seriously wrong with society. So guess what? The demographic, it looks like people are really crying out, and they're buying some of this material, and they're dabbling in looking into these matters. Hey, we better do something quick. So then through the movies and through the PBS and through the Discovery Channel and other things, they've already been doing it with pyramidology and with Egyptology. Now I believe they're going to, very soon, you mark my words, they're already doing it, branching over into some of this material. The Naomi Wolfs have already done it. And there's been a few others, trying to get a bestseller on the bestseller list that deals in conspiratorial information that's basically stolen and plagiarized from people who are not well known, who are way below the radar, or who want to stay below the radar. The great authors that we know, and the work that we do on symbolism is going to start turning up on mainstream bookshelves, on tables, and in the bestseller list by people whose publishing companies put billions of dollars behind them to make them look like they're the first to be saying it, they're the first to be mentioning it. And this will then, but it'll be a watered down version. It may not be a thoroughly accurate version. We have to watch out for this, because this information that we are into is controversial now, but it might be a little bit more, it might be less controversial and might be more popular, quote unquote, tomorrow, because this is how they pacify people. They know that they don't want people running to the hard stuff themselves. And debunking it on Fox Channel, that only works up to a certain point. You can only debunk it so many times. That just came from the internet, ergo it's rubbish. So that debunking only works.
We'll take a break and we'll come back, and I want to expound on that a little bit more. I have a couple of comments on that as well. This is the Global Reality, folks. Joining us is Michael Tsarion today, right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Stay with us. Back here with you on the Global Reality on this Wednesday edition of the show. My name is Josh Reeves. I'm your host. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. We're joined by Michael Tsarion. The new DVD is The Architects of Control, Volume 1. You can get that at architectsofcontrol.com, and go and check it out there. And if you haven't seen it, you had a couple of people in the chat room say that they actually have bought DVDs while we've been on air. So thank you so much for that. I know Michael appreciates that. And you're going to get something for your money here, folks. That's going to be very important towards your own enlightenment and the enlightenment of someone else. If you buy the DVD and you get something out of it, you go give it to somebody who you think might else get something out of it. Buy a copy for someone who you think might be right on the fence and right on the edge of coming to that understanding. But before the break, we were talking about all these levels of control and how they're all pervasive. One of the things that I think is interesting is this is the last time that we talked, Michael, back in September. We were discussing all this again fictionalizing the truth, so the truth seems like fiction, as I referred to it as. And we've seen more and more of that with the films and The Day After Tomorrow and the new remake of all this and how this continues. But what you're talking about is very important. We see this go on where people have adopted, even in the realm of scope of, the alternative research community, there are gatekeepers and there are people out there who, all Freemasonry is satanic, Luciferian devil worship. Do not look into it. Do not look into it. That's all that it is. Just look away. And what does that do? It gets people following another mindset, and it gets them not looking for themselves. So that's the whole key issue here as to why you have these History Channel programs, why you have these, this new stuff like Dan Brown coming out with movies on the Masonic street structures of Washington, D.C. That's exactly why they're doing this, because it's about neutralizing those of us that are putting out real information. This is why the term New World Order is now being thrown around everywhere. I saw some sitcom. I walked by a TV about a month or so ago, and I saw a TV that it was some sitcom on, and this mother says, "Oh, well, it's a New World Order in my house." So you see this everywhere, and over the Christmas holidays, every time I looked at the television, there was all these shows on about how, the wise men were actually astrologers. They were into astrology. They were able to calculate when Jesus was going to be born because they were astrologers, and this was long before we even knew astrology existed. Acting as if they're planting the flag at Plymouth Rock on this information, Michael.
Yeah, this has happened in the past, you see. Part of it is natural marketing, milieu. Some of the there is a certain amount of filtration from any type of counterculture or from the fringe. There obviously will be a bleeding off into some areas of the mainstream. I mean, that's happened even with some of my work, I myself turned up on the Sci-Fi Channel, and they interviewed me. So a certain amount of bleeding over can happen. But that's not what I was addressing. I was addressing the wholesale turning around of the controllers to say we better do something here, where they actually, again, in order to stop the real message from getting out, as you said, just to put a plug in the people that are way too, deep and who know too much. Then you create a second and a third mouthpiece. You promote your own books. You have the Harper and Rose, and you have the Macmillans Press, you see, and you have all the bigwigs and the boss hogs. They start co-opting elements of this. They come up with their own hosts, so they come up with their own authors, and they start putting out this stuff in a different kind of way, dropping some of these terms, dropping some of this information about Freemasonry and Illuminati. And by the way, you're absolutely right. I'm totally against all of those people who just bash something without having the faintest idea, and also bash other teachers without who the hell are they, to come along and say that this teacher should not be listened to, or that teacher is a fake, or that teacher, they have no evidence to provide for any of this. So I'm against all of that. But the thing we do have to look forward to in the future is that the mainstream isn't just going to roll over. The mainstream is already, I believe, thinking about how they can take some of this radical information regarding the Council on Foreign Relations and the Fabian Society and the Illuminati, you see, and they're itching to try and bring it to the mainstream, but in a very sanitized way that, again, may, in fact, cause a great deal of confusion. Do you remember at the very final scenes of the Brotherhood of the Bell movie? And for people who haven't seen that, it's linked to my website. They can go onto YouTube and put in Brotherhood of the Bell with Glenn Ford. Do you remember the scene where he's at the show that the actor William Conrad is hosting? It's like a sort of a typical TV show, a Jerry Springer type of event.
Yes.
And the professor is sitting there, and this host is just allowing these imbeciles to come down to the podium and give their opinions about, what the professor is saying about the Brotherhood of the Bell. And of course, they have every theory under the sun, that it's Nazis, it's neo-Nazis, it's fascists, it's communists, it's Catholics, it's whatever. And the host also embellishes this. He comes up with his own crazy theory, whatever. And so they put so much broken china out there to cover the few hidden pieces of plaster of the Napoleon that you're trying to piece together. I'm using an anecdote there from the Sherlock Holmes story in which, they have this crime in which a Napoleon busts are being broken, but to cover up the crime, the criminal breaks tons and tons of china so that the few pieces that you're looking for cannot be detected. A brilliant smokescreen. So this is also what's going to be happening in the future, in which they're going to Jerry Springer it, just in exactly the same way the Brotherhood of the Bell warns you that they're going to do, in order to create. And remember, those aspects of that they may throw in don't necessarily need to be wrong. It's a 70-30 split, like in the Brotherhood of the Bell. Some of the points that the people who are coming to the podium are making are actually 100% true. But when it's just a cackle of voices, and when it's in a certain kind of ambiance or situation in which you can't afford to go deeply, and when the program itself is skewed to make you look like a nut, then you see it works perfectly. And this is exactly the kind of arena spectacle they're going to make of some of this information. We have to be very wary of it. So when I put up my own DVDs and my own books out, I always put this into the introduction. And I encourage people, you see, to be very discerning about the kind of information that they buy in these particular years right now. The kind of information that they amass must come from credible sources, because tomorrow, when your neighbor is into it, and when it does become vogue, and when it is chatted about under the hair dryer and down at the local pub, you now may be, buying into some stuff that's just so way out there and so, vagrant, and have not really the core stuff. This is already what's happening on the internet and what's happening in the chat rooms, in which it gets so diluted, you see, that the real core information, whether it's about the Zionists or whether it's about the Jesuits or whether it's about any of these other things we're talking about, actually the truth starts to slip away. And remember, these people are very adroit, and they have the millions to be able to throw at the subject matter. So we have to be aware of that, and we have to be bookmarking those particular scholars and those particular experts who really do know what the hell is going on, and make sure that we always go back to their work, because that's going to be authentic. The other stuff is going to be completely packaged.
Well, I tell you, I mean, in my work and in my research, I mean, I've never once, I've went and looked at every single claim and every single thing that Michael Tsarion's ever put out, every single thing that Jordan Maxwell's ever put out, Bill Cooper ever put out. I went and looked into every single last thing on my own. I didn't take anything that anyone ever said at face value, and subsequently I ended up finding out all sorts of other truths on my own that these teachers didn't lead me to. So, I mean, that to me, Michael, is what we have to get across to people, is the fact that, you know, and look, I mean, you know, people do, people are guilty of doing it to me. People do it to me. They take everything that I say at face value. They don't go look into it themselves. People do it to you. They do it to everyone. But that's the main thing here, people, is that we are not the purveyors of this information. We are not the ones. We are simply the vehicle. And you have to be your own vehicle in finding out these truths on your own. It's very imperative.
That's absolutely 100% endorse that. I also would add that we're not cult figures. We're not big daddies. We're not telling you to leave that allegiance so that you start trailing behind me.
No.
Which is a lot what happens. They want to become teacher's pet. They want to become a fan base. They want to exalt you over everybody else. That's why I keep mentioning who my mentors are. That's why I keep putting the sources and references on every page of my website and in all the DVDs I do, because I do not want fan base. I'm not interested in that. In fact, the world came to me. I didn't go to it. This information, it was, you know, I was pushed into this field by my mentors and by people like Jordan Maxwell. It wasn't something I wanted to do publicly. So I'm not after fame and success and all of those kinds of things. But what I will do is I will make sure that my work is referenced. And of course, I do make mistakes. There's errata. There's errata even in the greatest school and college textbooks. So, of course, we're not right on everything. Nobody ever said we were experts on everything.
Absolutely. Right there, Michael. More on the other side, folks. This is the Global Reality. Stay with us. Back here with you on the Global Reality on this Wednesday edition of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Josh Reeves. I'm your host. We're joined today by Michael Tsarion. His new DVD is The Architects of Control, Volume 1. Yes, Volume 1 is pretty unbelievable to be a 2.5-hour film, but it's only Volume 1. There's going to be more on the way. So you can go to architectsofcontrol.com and get a DVD. And thank you to those who have gotten DVDs today. I know we very much appreciate that. You know, it really, the information really sells itself. What I want to get into, we talked about, you know, where people in our own ranks go for information, this idea of having discernment, and discernment being one of the most important things. But what I want to shift gears and move into now is something that I've just always been fascinated with in Michael's work personally. And sorry, I got to be selfish here for a moment, folks, and get Michael to go in something from my own interest. But, you know, I'm just fascinated in a constant source of my own research is where this idea of where the elites go for their information, and this idea of how they are on a constant search for information for their own purposes, and how they engage in these various activities. And if we want to go, we can go to King Solomon, we can go back to you know, Dr. John Dee, all these various examples of this idea of going to you know, off-earth entities, as it were, for information. That's something I'm just ultimately fascinated with, Michael.
Well, that is stuff I talked about in the Atlantis work that I did, and you know, going with the idea that there is a removed capstone, that there is a gap between the physical pyramid of 3 dimensions, and then you have this 2-dimensional removed, you know, capstone, and various other indications that show that there is some sort of pan-dimensional, you know, level to this. Of course, that would be on the highest level. How that information is then translated and filtered down to lower henchmen is more normal. You know, it comes in book form, and they have to make sure that they matriculate. That's why there is a fraternal structure, is partly because they want the right people to have access to that kind of knowledge, and so they have these grading ceremonies. But at the highest level, I've no doubt about it that the kind of levels of mastery of control are not something that people are just finding out from reading books or from their own even evil, you know, mentality. It's something that is certainly controlled from something higher, something greater. I'm a total believer in that. That's what my first book was about. And so people have to be very wary of this as well, of how history itself has been manipulated to move forward. This thing, you know, is very dark. And about that, you see, and don't forget too that when researchers like myself are working, it's a little bit difficult because we're constantly having to check on our sources, because a critic might rightly say, you claim that all of your information comes from whistleblowers and a lot of the work comes from Freemasons. How can you trust that some Freemason has written a book is not writing some concocted stuff to send you, you know, down a blind alley? And so they're quite right. And this is what's on our mind continually, because it is compromised. You know, if you're reading a book on Christianity, but it's been written by a clergyman, you know, can you really trust it? So it's always a task. It's always a challenge to be going to the sources that you trust that are cross-referenceable. Remember, before the break, you talked about how you'd researched my work and you'd cross-referenced it, and you tracked it. You followed a bunch of leads down, and you found out that they were, you know, accurate and led you to other things. That's basically what you can do. But you can never be 100% certain. You see, when I work reading and resourcing, it's very difficult. You know, I picked up a book the other day. I've read it many times before. The Warriors and the Bankers, I think it was, by Butler and Defoe. You know, the book is published by a Freemasonic press. In the back pages of the book is a bunch of other books that are endorsed by Freemasonry, you see, and making it quite obvious that one or both of those authors are Freemasons. And then when you read the actual content of the book, they're making sure that you have a sort of a nicer impression of these Knights Templars. You know, they're talking history, of course, but they definitely are erring on the side that the Templars were the hard-done-by ones, that they were the ones who were, you know, the good guys. You see this in the Da Vinci Code. I mean, from a dramatic point of view, I love the movie. I think it's a really well-made movie. But of course, from an ideological point of view, look at the end of the movie in which they're trying to soften you up. They even make the protagonist a female, a good-looking female. Then you see these shadowy sort of Rosicrucian type Knights Templar, and my goodness, they're not these sword-wielding, bloodthirsty knights. They happen to be tweed-wearing, modern, good, you know, teacher, you know, tutor types, professional people, well-meaning, all of this kind of palaver, you know. So of course the viewer needs to, you know, put up a sort of a red flag. Don't necessarily think it's wrong, but always, you know, think about that. Who would be making a movie like that? Who would be trying to present that kind of information to you? So it's a constant filtration process. And as you progress, you start to discover that so much of this disinformation is put out because they don't want you to realize what you said, what was the heart of your question. Where does this information really come from? Could it be that the whole of history is experimental? There's some giant experiment going on a massive global level that we don't perceive? Could it be that in fact they really do have the power and the money to be able to put out authors galore, both on this side and that, and in the middle and up there and down there, you know, to disseminate all of the information? Authors like myself are constantly having to ask, could it be that all the information I've studied has been put there for me in some kind of crazy, you know, sci-fi, you know, vanilla sky type of way in which the reality has been put there before you by some hidden, you know, I find that Vanilla Sky is very good for that point because it brings that out. But there's been other movies that talk about this. You know, first of all, it's painful enough to even realize that two sides of the political spectrum might be under the control of the same hand. My God, you know, it's difficult to understand that a great deal of the top lawyers or the top insurance agencies or the top magistrates or justices of the peace or police chiefs or mayors or governors could belong to all sorts of fraternities, you know, behind the lodge door. It's difficult for us to accept that even the people we see in the music business, in the rap business, in the rock business could all belong to, you know, a certain cult. A totally debauched and satanic cult. All of them. All of the people that you happen to see who are making the millions, you see, and are being put before you. So think about the same problem further up the scholarly ladder. When you start to have to, as you get higher and higher up, and your sort of vista is more clear. But then you have the danger of the clouds coming in. The higher you go, your vision can also become a little more murky. So people like myself have a hell of a job, you see, trying to work out what is really authentic. And could it be that all of these writers, anything to do with Masonry, anything to do, even a humble book like the one I was just telling you, which appears to be a very, very good book exposing, you know, what was really going on in the 14th century and so on and so on and so on, where are they getting this information? And why are they writing these books today? Same thing goes for any of these Grail books or Holy Blood books. In fact, it goes for almost anything in the world, but it's specifically important when you're dealing with material that's already controversial. Where are they getting their information? Why are they putting it out? How come some of these publishers are pretty big wigs, you know, that are putting this out? And then the whole media spin and the controversy and the various movies that come out to also promote this. My God, you know, we've got some very hefty questions here about this whole thing.
Yeah, of course, and you had somebody like David Ovison who put out, you know, tons of books about Freemasonic symbolism and all this good work. They make the guy a bloody 33rd degree Freemason for his work. I mean, it's like, what are we dealing with, people, you know?
If he wasn't already a Freemason to begin with.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly the point. You know, we're coming on a break here again. But that's exactly the point of it. How do we know that he wasn't already to begin with? It's the owning of the information, it's the owning of the nomenclature, and that's how they've been able to control us and manipulate us, is by controlling the things that, of course, we think are there. I mean, I've had my paradigm blown many times going, oh, goodness, I went down a rabbit hole here. There was another controlled paradigm. I mean, that is running all over the place, and I think it's something very important people need to know about. We're going to take a break, come back. We'll get into the third hour of the broadcast today with Michael Tsarion. ArchitectsOfControl.com is the website. Get that DVD today. We're going to talk more on the other side. Dionysus cults, rock and roll, all of this stuff right here on the Global Reality on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. Stay with us. Back here with you on the Global Reality on this Wednesday edition of the show. We're joined today by Michael Tsarion from the ArchitectsOfControl.com. MichaelTsarion.com also is his website. You can go there and wealth of material. I mean, it's not just the DVDs that he puts out for sale to help him continue with his work, but also, I mean, the wealth of free information, I think, is what's amazing that he puts out on his website. I mean, there's so much documented things there where you can go, and the sources are there, and it's been a wealth of, an endless source of information and wealth for myself, because there'll be things in my information I'll be looking for, and I'll say, well, I wonder if Michael's onto this, and I'll go look, and of course there'll be something there where, of course, Michael has been onto it, and it'll save me hours of research. That's the whole thing, is that, as we talked about, a lot of this stuff is just consolidation of years' worth of information. Folks, we don't have a lot of time left here for, you to have to spend 20, 30 years researching this stuff, as a lot of us have. I mean, I can't believe I've been researching this stuff for 17 years now. I mean, I'm only 32, and Michael's not much older than myself, but that's the thing, is we don't have a lot of time left, and we have to, sort of fast-track people along the lines, because, I mean, this is the most important thing that you can be involved in for the reason strictly because it's your own path. And if you're not walking down your own path, you're walking down someone else's. That's just the bottom line of it. But, that's one of the things I also liked in the film, Michael, is that you talk about this importance of people walking down their own path and not being led down it by someone else, and this idea of the free will aspect, but also not becoming involved in someone else's path to the point of where you may be leading them down somewhere where they're not naturally supposed to go themselves. Can you talk about that a bit?
Well, that's right, and it's okay to have signposts. Like I was saying earlier, I'm not a cult figure. I'm not trying to get people to leave down their allegiances over there so that they adopt a bunch of new ones over here in the conspiracy movement, We're only signposts. We're only teachers that can put out our information, and that's our right to do that. We don't need people bashing us, who haven't even got 2 brain cells, to making the problem even worse. We put our information out there egalitarianly and say, here, you can come of it if you want. If you don't, then that's fine too. We're not forcing it down anybody's throat. But ultimately, we're only signposts for you to pick up and do deeper research yourself. And I'm glad to see that a lot of people who come to my work have gone on to do that. They've gone on to do shows about or books or uploads regarding symbolism, or regarding some of the other aspects that we've touched upon. And I think that with this new Architects of Control, a series, we'll see even more. So I know that I've spawned a lot of people, who've gone on to do exactly that, and to look at things deeper. And remember, they make this into an interest, not some sort of paranoid, knee-jerk type of fear-based thing. They actually make it into something creative, and they actually, bring out greater qualities within themselves, because I believe a lot of people have tremendous investigative ability, and they have a tremendously focused mind. It's just they haven't found something yet to really get, their teeth into. And so this kind of work, it was the same for me. That's how I got into it. But the thing is that, I never forget that these people that I've studied were just signposts for me. Not all of them had all of the picture. No one person is ever going to have the whole picture in this. So it's bound to be collaborative. It's bound to be that you have to get your hands around as much of the information that's out there as possible. You will have a lot of illusions being shattered at some point, and that's very healthy. And it's very healthy to be pushed to your limit to find out what's going on. But you see, this is, as I've always described, an ascent. This job is a spiritual vertical thing. This is part of your spiritual life. This kind of awakening is not just something mundane at all. That's why it is, in some instances, quite challenging. Is because it is identical to spiritual development. When you're learning about the world order, when you're learning about consciousness, when you're learning about how the power systems of the world work and how men are controlled, right down to their libido, right down to their consciousness, you are absolutely discovering something important. Just like I said in the DVD. How can people who know nothing about the mind and know nothing about thinking then tell me that they're on the path for enlightenment? You remember we show those? I show a couple of clips from the Hamlet with Laurence Olivier, and I mentioned in it there, you know, that it's ludicrous, it's paradoxical to say that you're on the path of enlightenment, be you a Christian or be you anyone else, to say that you're looking for the real truth and the secrets of life when you don't even know the first thing about your biology, about your psychology, about your physiology, you see, about the being that you are, and most importantly, about yourself. It's a total contradiction. So this work is like an ascent up a mountain. The trick is that it's difficult to climb, and you may even get a bunch of cuts on your knee, and you might even, you know, have periods where it's very cold and certainly very lonely. But that's what it is like for a hermit to climb up a mountain. But the benefit of it, the beauty of it, is that you get this incredible vision. You get this incredible scenery laid out in front of you about how the entire world works, from the God level to the human level, you know, and so on. Your vision increases, your perception increases, your perspective is widened. This is what is of incredible value, and see, those values cannot be explained to somebody else. Once a person has gone along this road of knowledge a certain way, it isn't really, they're not really able, you know, to turn to their girlfriend and sort of explain the ecstasy, you know, of where they're at mentally. It's just not going to happen. It's not something that's transmittable. Those are very precious, private euphorias and private ecstasies and private epiphanies. They're not something that necessarily can be shared with somebody else. So people who are coming in from the outside, who are maybe looking at the deep austerity and the seriousness that people have when they're studying this information, of course they're going to think you're paranoid and you're a bit of a downer and you're fatalistic and all this stuff. But they're coming right out of the world as it is. Of course they're going to shower you with all of this BS because look where they're coming from. These are people who are coming in from the racket of the world who don't know the first thing about how the matrix of the world works at all. They're not aware of any of this information. And so it's you know, my message is always never to be put off by these kinds of people. In the Irish Origins DVD, I have an extensive introduction. It's a very long introduction because it includes a message both to not only the beginners, but to the insiders. We didn't have time to put those introductions into the Architects of Control, but I was able to put them into the Irish Origins DVD. And I have a very long section there addressing the beginner, specifically addressing what we know to be the beginner, the person who comes to this information for the first time. Then I move on to this introduction to the insider. And where did I get the inspiration for that? Exactly in the very final scene of the Brotherhood of the Bell. I mean, it has been on my mind personally since I started my professional work in this, but the Brotherhood of the Bell's last scene also really, really drives it home, in which the professor, remember, he's told by a friend, remember in the movie, that if he can find somebody else to stand up with him, to say, I'm also a member of the Bell, then the people of the world will believe you, because it's a strange quirk of human nature that when the world will not believe one person, they will believe two. So the professor has the problem of trying to locate this other man that was initiated, you see, who's younger than him, that might also take his side. So he actually does find this man. He finds him in his school dorm room, and they have this incredible conversation in which the older man, here we go, the mentor, the hermit, the man who's been along the path ahead of you, the person who's trying to remove the obstacle for you, he's basically entreating the younger neophyte, the aspirant, and this aspirant is the fool in the tarot card. He is standing there ready to have the world system offer him whatever he wants, Josh. He can have the money, he can have the women, he can have the fame, he can have the businesses, he can have the political control. He's the naked one. He is the one who's standing there with a promissory note right in front of him. And here's this guy who's been called a paranoiac on every TV station in his room now, woken him up in the morning to try and beg him not to take the bait. And you know what they say? What the Glenn Ford character says is what you intimated before the break. These people leave you no middle ground. You're either for them, with them, or you have to be against them. They don't leave you the ground. They do not leave you the choice. If there was a choice, hey, maybe we take it. But in their world, in the world of these people, of the checkerboard, you are either of ignorance or you're of knowledge. There is no room to sit on the fence, because they have you down as something dispensable and something that's utterly a control creature, a pet that they can control. Or you're part of their institution, and you have to then crawl through the hoops to make sure that you're good enough. This is what the conversation in the Brotherhood of the Bell was also about. And this man is saying, but at this point, you know, you owe them nothing. They've done nothing for you, and you owe them nothing. So don't let the rope get round your neck. Don't wait for the time where they have a hold over you. Be free, be independent. And then he says something absolutely magnificent. He says, if I had your time again, I would have told them to go to hell, because then I would have known that everything I'd have made from my life would have been my own, or I didn't need it. And this is the most precious words, and this is the words that rule my life, and this is the words that I also try to, teach to other people, is make your world the way you want it. Make your world by your own effort and by your own selfhood. And if there's luxuries, enjoy them. If they're not there in front of you, don't lament it. Don't get all broken up about it. Work hard and do your own life so that you're in total control of your own sovereignty, your own life. Because stop screaming about that you want political sovereignty, or you want legal sovereignty, or you want social sovereignty. If you don't have sovereignty in your own life, where you're in control of your own life and you're in control of your own boundaries, and you can, say no to some of these other promissory notes that these secret societies and these secret people will offer you, and that so many people in the media have taken the bait. So many people have taken the bait. People, debunkers scream about me of being some sort of insider. I mean, what are they doing? What are they talking about? What the hell have I got to show that these guys have showered me with wealth? My God, I got my few little websites and a few little products out here, and trying to, run a little business to keep my food in my mouth. Why don't they turn to the rap stars? Why don't they turn to the bogus nonsense that's on the $1 million TV screens every 5 minutes? These people living in mansions galore, driving around in Bentleys, with millions upon millions of dollars. Why are these people not focused on debunking these characters who have obviously taken the bait, who are totally duplicitous, who are totally hypocritical, who are totally responsible for leading the children and the young away into further levels of debauchery and crime and miasma of psychic confusion? You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, people have not got their priorities correct. As you rightly said a couple of, in the last section, how audacious it is for these people to come in even into this movement and throw around a lot of stuff that causes confusion. There's already enough on our plate just to do the studies alone.
Yeah, I mean, there's people are always constantly trying to throw mud at again, something you've covered extensively is the teacher's always the threat, and I've had that, bestowed onto me through this work. But, you mentioned, and one of the things I wanted to talk about, and you mentioned the tarot, and I'd love to have you do the tarot on air sometime, Michael, if we ever could do that in the future. I'd just love to have you do that. It'd just be an honor to have you do that on air. But, that's one of the things for me is I came into this for my own search of spirituality first. Before I found out about the Fabians or the secret societies or anything else, I was into the work of like Vera Stanley Alder and Helena Blavatsky and Jung and Plato and whatnot. And I came into it from my own spiritual quest, and then came in and found out about black operations and the rest of it. So I think I sort of have an advantage coming from that standpoint first, and then coming to this later. But some people come into it backwards, and they come into these various levels. And again, as we talked about earlier, that's what you have to understand is that we're all here for the same reasons. We're all here because we're seeking a path, and this path that sought us. I've been on this path my entire life and just never really, knew it till I got to a certain age. But that's the thing about it is that we all have the right motives and the reasons for wanting to find this out. But it's where we get derailed off from that path is where the control comes in at, and that's what these people bank on. As you mentioned earlier, Michael, millions of dollars go into getting you diverted off the path every single day.
Absolutely right. And I can elaborate upon this whole thing where I had a message to the insider that was born out of that last scene of the Brotherhood of the Bell. Because, you see, remember my critique earlier on about the fact that the media may co-opt a lot of the controversial material that we deal with now and try to make it into popcorn for people? One of the things that can counterbalance that, we'll counterbalance it by continuing to do what we do authentically and honestly, but another area that could help counterbalance this toning down of the material or packaging it for the mass audience is that more insiders start breaking ranks. First of all, I think that we're in the astrological era in which that's going to definitely begin. It's not just me saying it. I believe that we're really in a time for that. I often believe that a lot of the people from the inside are going to be very disgruntled because they're going to realize that their masters have not delivered on many of their promises. Maybe some of them will have a true spark of humanity, and maybe some of them already had it. They just got misled into joining these, and I'm even talking about the political spectrum and all the way up into the deepest levels of the secret societies. So, and I know it's difficult for people in the highest levels of secret societies to turn coat, but let's leave that aside. Let's just go with the optimistic hope that you see some of these people start writing, they start leaking, and remember they're in the precise best place to be doing that. And even if we don't get some of the elite members doing it, well then the people behind the scenes in the police, people behind the scenes in the court system, in the legal system, in the media, you see, my goodness, what a wonderful world it would be if we didn't have to carry the whole burden of having to expose a lot of this stuff, and that more and more authentic voices from within came and told you their true stories and said, you know, we're going to go for broke, just exactly the same way this character that Glenn Ford plays, it did. And believe me, these boys were really at the top of the ladder. So the message there is to the insider that you can expose, you do not have to be a machine creature. You're in a precise place. And morally, let's not just talk about your duty to humanity. What about your own moral duty to yourself? You know, is it good to be in submission to these people? I mean, see, people in America have to realize that you have an oligarchy in America, no doubt about it. Just because they don't have crowns on their heads and walk on a red carpet. Well, actually, they do walk on a red carpet, but let's leave that aside. But the fact is, the people who are elites today, the Obamas and a lot of people in the media, are linked by blood to these royal dynasties of old, like I've been saying for how many years I can't even remember. And other people like David Icke have been saying, they got to realize you have an oligarchy working there.
Stay right there, Mike. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back, and I want to pick up there with the bloodlines, the oligarchies. More on the other side. This is The Global Reality. Joining us today, Michael Tsarion, folks. Stay with us. And we are back here with you, ladies and gentlemen, on this Wednesday edition of The Global Reality right here on the Oracle Broadcasting Network. I want to thank all our FM and AM affiliates out there carrying the show. You know, we've had a lot of more terrestrial radio stations come on and start carrying the show since last time we had Michael Tsarion on with us. So a lot of people out there getting the education today for the first time. And, you know, I really want to thank everybody out there for carrying the show and really, you know, helping us get these messages out, because a lot of the topics and the stuff that we're getting into and we get into on the show on, you know, 6 days a week really are the sort of the things that have been, you know, sort of frowned upon and sort of seen as a distraction by some elements. You know, some people want you talking about, you know, martial law and FEMA camps and all this stuff. But, you know, I really want to thank everybody for being able to understand that there's so much and so all-encompassing with this type of thing, of research and information that, you know, right now it's imperative. And, you know, like it or not, we're all coming into this, these revelations, as it were. And one of the things that Michael mentioned before the break was this idea of the bloodlines and these aristocracies and these same bloodlines that go back, of course, to Acadia, Sumeria, Assyria, Babylon, these things, you know, bloodlines in control. And that's one of the you know, the great things for the New World Order has been Barack Obama, because people, oh, well, he's not a part of the same bloodline as Bush is. Well, of course, you know, CBS News reported on that clip, and I'll put that clip in the chat room for you guys at oraclebroadcasting.com as well, where CBS News reported, oh, Bush's family tree, it just so happens that Bush is related to, you know, Princess Diana and Barack Obama and Sarah Palin. Oh, isn't that just so interesting? And people think there's just nothing to it, Michael, but it's two cases of what you made there. One, the bloodlines and the aristocracy, and then number two, the media trying to own this information, make it look, oh, isn't it cute that they're all related?
Absolutely. Excuse me there for slurping some tea, in case anybody heard that. But you're absolutely right, and I have that clip up on my forum. People go to michaeltsarion.com and then go through to the forum and click on the War on You page. That particular upload is right there. I mean, it's sad in one way that they have to wait till it gets to the mainstream news before people will, you know, mull on that and believe that. But if that's good, you know, and in one way, the other side is that, look, even if the mainstream media report on that, as long as the information gets out, but this information has been reported on by authors, you know, for years and years and years, trying to point out some single basic message. I mean, if it's Dr. John Coleman or G. Edward Griffin or Eustace Mullins, they've all tried to say, look, forget any idea, first of all, that you've got a democracy in America, and secondly, realize that why that is because you have this oligarchy working. And don't mistake in your mind, just because you have been put in front of you a left-wing Democratic Party, that they're any less connected. So a lot of the work of the scholars I've mentioned and my own work tries to point this out, does point this out. People only have to go to my article. It's right on michaeltsarion.com, called The Weapons of Mass Destruction Found, and on there we have the proof that even the so-called Fabian groups and the so-called left-wing groups on the street level are well in with the royal dynasties. Many of these leaders, especially the Milners and the Cecil Rhodeses and the Sidney Webbs and all of these other people, you know, were well in with the royal families at the very highest level. They were high-level degrees of Freemasonry. And so we might see it on the street level, and many scholars then think, oh, goody, 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 this is, you know, a bona fide humanitarian group or whatever. Nothing can be further from the truth. That's just you know, again, the wolf in the sheep's clothing. And so people have to realize that in America, from the very earliest days, this is even before the official colonization of America. We're talking about colonization of America about 100 years before the official founding of America, in which the Knights Templars and Freemasons had already set up shop in Virginia, you see, and in Maryland and in the East Coast there, and had already bought and paid America and put it under the state control of the British oligarchy. What later is overlaid upon that corporate body, you see, is immaterial. That's just to keep the peon and the menial busy, thinking that they actually have a free country. But the land itself has long since been owned by, tentacles of the Hudson Bay Company and the British East India Company and the Russell Trust and all of these orgs coming out of Britain. And all the rest of it is just spin to make sure that people never find that out. First of all, there's a big difference even between state control and government control. People have to realize that government is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's just, some people might say, oh, it's just semantics, Michael. But no, it's not. If you actually go back and do the research, you'll find out that government is nothing negative. Government is just the association of men and women coming together to redress wrongs, you see, and to get things done for the public good. State control is primarily about confiscation and war and through corruption. And see, so today when we see reports of confiscations, foreclosures, even if we're talking about foreclosures on the local level, with the banks doing it, and all the way up the level, we had it in 1929 when you had the Depression, that was nothing but a act of confiscation. Because there was no war, there was no famine, there was no drought when all of these farmers were put out of business. So so often you see, there's another massive act of confiscation. This is a form of what I've always spoken of as what's called colonization and colonialization. We always think of those things in military terms. But we have to understand that there's also economic colonialization. We also have to realize there's psychic colonialization. And so this war on consciousness and this particular form of colonization takes many forms. And so when we see the manipulating the banks to scare the hell out of us so that we'll vote for a particular person, that's a pattern. They've repeated that many, many times before. They shake you up to get your attention. Of course, then they tell you that everyone is overwhelmingly for the new guy in town. No more people voted for this chump than anybody's ever voted in America. It was still about 38%, still very, very low. This was already admitted mainstream. You see, so people are thinking about opting out. Some already are. And other people are thinking of opting out of the entire political process, and I favor that. I think they should completely opt out because you have no power anyway. It's absolutely illusionary. The power that you have
here on the show, yeah, absolutely.
The power that you have can be exercised in other ways, of course, through legal means and through counter-cultural means and private means by writing books and putting up websites on the World Wide Web, you see, and explaining all of these kinds of things. But thinking that you're going to vote for the lesser of two evils, or the evil of two lessers, as James Bogrites put it, is obviously not going to work at all. That just keeps a bunch of very extrovert people who come out of college and they're members of fraternities and they've done really well within school, so now they want to join the Green Party, and now they want to, join the Democrats, and they want to join it, and they're busy, all egoistically, feathering their own nest. This is what has passed for politics, down through the years. It's riddled with corruption. It's riddled with all sorts of insider dealings and whatnot. It has no validity anymore, and even from a systematic point of view, it doesn't work. So people need to now realize that we're in a new age with new solutions, and start to check out and do things from an adventurous point of view, and basically just deconstruct the old sick, sinister models that we've had, where the men in gray, have complete control over everybody's life.
That's exactly it. That's one of the things we put here on this broadcast again is as long as you continue to feed the beast, and as long as you continue to participate in their system that they control, you're acknowledging that system, and you're letting them say, you're saying to them, okay, it's okay, we accept this. We've got to stop accepting and buying what they sell us. That's the most important. More on the other side. Join us today, Michael Tsarion, the Architects of Control, new DVD, architectsofcontrol.com. Get it today, and we will be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us. Back here with you in the Global Reality on this Wednesday edition. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Joining us today, Michael Tsarion. MichaelTsarion.com is his website, as well as architectsofcontrol.com, and the new DVD made with the Red Ice crew there out of Sweden. If you never listened to Red Ice Radio, they does do some great work and great shows over there. And I'm just honored to be able to have such colleagues out there in the field that are putting out this type of information. And this stuff is. That's what we started Oracle Broadcasting. We started this network 4 or 5 months ago to be able to bring you this kind of information. I mean, this was about, a lot of us felt that there was really a real gaping hole as far as radio and that kind of thing, where these outlets could be there. Red Ice has been at the forefront of that type of radio for a long time, but we really wanted to bring something here and have something domestically here in America that was covering all of the issues and really having nothing being taboo, and that's why I like having Michael on the show with us and just allowing him to be able to have free range and talk about whatever he feels is important. But, going back to what we mentioned earlier with all of this conditioning going on and the conditioning program going on in the media right now is unbelievable. And one of the things I wanted to get Michael's take on was this new, of course, Roland Emmerich film. Roland Emmerich, the director of The Day After Tomorrow, which subsequently Al Gore stole footage from to make it appear that, the ice caps melting and all that. And he also made Independence Day. Well, he's got the new film coming out this summer entitled 2012. And, of course, you go watch the trailer, and it encourages people to go find out the truth about 2012 on their own and all this stuff with John Cusack going to come and save us from gloom and destruction. I mean, talk about that for a minute, Michael, about how they are able to, use this fear to, again, hijack the information.
Exactly, and remember, they're very, very savvy by studying countercultures. In just the same way that nowadays you have the retro fashions, harkening back to the 60s imagery, and in exactly the same way that the idioms and sort of fashion statements of the 60s were then instantly co-opted by the Chelsea set, and then it just became merely a stupid-ass fashion statement. We've got to realize that every time something comes from the counterculture, I don't care if it's skateboarding, breakdancing, or peace culture, or whatever culture, you're going to soon find that it nudges itself over into the mainstream because there's money to be made. And therefore, we cannot expect that it's going to be different with this alternative research subject matter. It is right now, so we have the luxury, you see, of having people who are pretty much authentic, working on a shoestring and taking the flak and pioneering. We had a first-generation group of people who did that in America, and now we've moved on, a little bit from that. But you see, very soon, within our generation, within our time, within the next couple of years, within the next couple of years, you're going to see the mainstream starting to co-opt a lot of this information. And that's why people have to really be aware of this now, that if they want the popcorn version, then by all means sit around and wait for it, because the media will be happy to churn that out for you. And one of the ways that they do this is through these films, through these movies. You not only have that, but you have these people like the Camerons of the world, the guy that made the Titanic and the Terminator series, completely in league with the world Zionist or orders, appearing on Time magazine cover, which is a Knights it's either a Knights Templar. I think it was Henry Luce was a member of the Knights of Malta. Yes. So you've got so you've got these characters appearing on the hugging one another. They've just found the tomb of Jesus. They don't mention the 5,000 other senior archaeologists have said no, nothing of the kind. But no, because the media is behind it, because these Knights of Malta are behind it. And if the Vatican wants it to be said, it will be said. And if you can co-opt a nice blue-eyed, blonde, tall, Western Gentile director to say, yep, he's given it the okay, then that will make big press. And that's what then finally people see, because they push this forward. You don't realize that none of this has actually been proven historically or biblically. But as long as they can put forward a movie, a mainstream magazine, or a 2-hour PBS special on it, that's what the millions are going to see. We only reach a few thousand. These people are able to reach the 200, 300 million people of America and the rest of the world, and this is where the danger is. And they're just about, I believe, to co-opt some of this information. They've already been nibbling around of it already. And we have to. I'm very cautious of this, because this is something I've seen in the heavy metal genre, which I'm very much into, and I've seen how that's been plagiarized, and completely, the rock and roll has been totally plagiarized and totally debauched by people who have no business in the core of it. They're not rebels. They're not people who are trying to, come from the true spirit of music or the true spirit of humanitarianism. And that's what then the public sees, you see, and then blames it or whatever. And everyone knows that this happens right across the board. It happens with all of the different movements in this world. And that is happening so that for all the teachers that they put in front of you, you won't get to hear the one who's really saying the truth. It's, again, the broken plaster to hide the China Napoleon, or the broken China that hides the plaster Napoleon, whatever way you want. But this is the strategy. If they can't suppress you, because in trying to suppress you overtly, you just move underground. If they kill you, then another Jack pops up in your place. So that hasn't worked. So the active use of suppression obviously doesn't really work. So there's another incredible strategy that people need to know about, which is the broken plaster, the broken China situation, in which you break so much bric-a-brac that the pearl, the jewel of the truth or the teaching is now obscured. So it's there in front of you. And you can't blame them for saying, oh, well, we presented it, we allowed it. but they're going to create so much of this white noise all around it that your brain is just going to be scrambled looking at all of the different evidence until you, and then of course, as you said before the break, that means that you don't have the 20, 30 years to wade through it. Hell, we don't even have the 20 years, the 30 years, most people don't have that to even get to level one, the stuff that we've already provided, for goodness sake, let alone when it's compromised by the modern media now. So coming back to your question, though, these directors, again, I would not accuse them entirely because, of course, I'm glad that something is out there better than nothing. If only people are going to learn about some of these mysteries through some of these mainstream movies, then okay, maybe it's not so bad. And you certainly can't blame some of the original Star Trek movies. You can't blame Rob Serling's Twilight Zone. There's also great media out there. There's great movies out there. And even movies like The Da Vinci Code and certain other movies are made with a great deal of passion and a great deal of love. So I'm not indicting that it should be taken down. I'm not a Luddite. I'm not somebody who says this should all go. But what I am saying is that a person who goes in there must have done their own homework, follow up on some of the things, watch the credits at the end, pay special attention to the negative space in movies, pay attention to the juxtaposition of certain images, the way the female is shown, the way animals are shown, the way sacred icons are shown, the way certain terms and phrases are being used. Use those movies for much more than the average person will use them for. I'm all for those movies because those movies, just like when I taught the kids symbolism in the Bay Area, I'm saying don't turn it off, turn it on, but only this time turn yourself on instead of passively sitting in front of it and just going, entertain me, I'm bored. Start looking at the amazing stuff that's in the subtext of these films, that's in the subliminal content, that's behind the scenes, follow it up, check it out. It becomes a greater adventure than saying, I'm all against that, it's evil, it's satanic, I don't want to know anything about it.
Yeah,
it's all about a creative interest.
That doesn't do anything. That just turns people off. Exactly. That's one of the biggest things we're up against here is the fact that people just, they don't check anything for themselves that we talked about before, but also it's this belief that, someone else has the answer. I mean, look, you mentioned Star Trek. Look at all the stuff that's in Star Trek throughout the years. I mean, you had Gene Roddenberry, who was a 33rd degree Freemason. He had one of von Braun's paperclip Nazis in as a consultant for technology. I mean, this stuff is being there and it's being subtly put in, but again, it's this manipulation of the mindset that becomes the most important thing. We're coming on a break here again in just a second, so we're going to stay right there. Architectsofcontrol.com is the website, as well as michaeltsarion.com. That's where you can go and get all of the books, all the information, and I definitely want to encourage you to go and get a copy of this DVD. I think it's just such a fascinating thing. I'm going to be honest with you, I've watched it about 5 times already just because every time I watch it, I go back and I find more and more things. But I want to get a comment from Michael on the other side. He had mentioned something about the heavy metal and the rock and roll thing, and I definitely want to touch on that because it's something very important, something I plan on making a film about in the future myself. This is The Global Reality. Joining us is Michael Tsarion. Don't go anywhere, folks. Back here with you on this Wednesday edition of The Global Reality. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. We are joined today by Michael Tsarion. His website is michaeltsarion.com, as well as architectsofcontrol.com. The new DVD is Architects of Control, Volume 1. And, there's so much information in it and so many video clips. I mean, the amount of things that are pulled together, and it really, I was sitting there with a pen writing down DVDs of movies I needed to go get. The Parallax View with Warren Beatty, that's definitely on my list of films to get. But one of the interesting things that's touched on in the film, and something that I've been doing an immense amount of research on, is Dionysian cults and this idea of the control of rock and roll. And Michael touched on it a bit earlier. But it's something I find all pervasive, especially with groups like the Ordo Templi Orientis, where, I mean, my goodness, you want to talk about littered with heavy metal musicians. I mean, it's almost as if, in England, you have to be a member of one of these lodges to be able to be a member of Parliament. I mean, it's just a prerequisite. Well, that's almost that same way in rock and roll, Michael. I mean, you almost have to be a member, especially in the British rock scene. It's been that way for, 3-4 decades now, where, you almost have to be a member of one of these OTO groups to even make it to the upper echelons of the rock business.
From day one, you've had to be a member, or you'll be recruited, like the Beatles were recruited, like the Rolling Stones have been recruited. It's well known that the Rolling Stones' early albums were made in Belgium or in the Netherlands under the auspices of some of the dignitaries there, people who are now heads of the Bilderberger societies and other royal orgs, you see, funding the way, paving the way. We know that there's different cells, the individual that I mentioned in the Architects of Control DVD, who was behind the Son of Sam killings and also behind the Manson escapades. This person, before he moved his cult over to America, it was very much like an eyes wide shut scenario is what he ran. He actually had a mansion in which the Eric Claptons and the Brian Joneses and the Marianne Faithfuls and all of these people were invited, and they were plied with as much cocaine and drugs as they wanted, and some of them turned their back on it, and some of them wouldn't have anything to do with it. Some of them wanted to live a more spiritual life, and of course they were either executed or removed from fame. They were compromised. Their name was blackened, or they were themselves overdosed on drugs because they were performing some sort of ritual. There's certain kind of men who will join these orders not realizing that they're going to actually be used as sacrificial goats because of certain qualities and traits that they have, because of their birthdays and other akashics that they have, you see. A very, very dangerous element there. But just even leaving that aside, and anyway, don't we know that the whole Manson thing had ritual elements as well? So this particular leader, cult leader, I'm just giving you one example of many here, the logos for his organization were Templar logos, very close to also a swastika, sort of look to the emblem of this particular cult. And see, we know that this has been the way in rock music from day one. Then we've had the people who won't buy into that, the people like the Pink Floyds and the Moody Blues and many other bands who say, yeah, we've seen this, we've sampled it, but I tell you what you can do, you can go and shove this up your ass because we're going to be, doing the real thing, the real music, and we're going to be teaching the right way through our music. We're not going to buy into this Dionysian bullshit. And of course, a lot of those bands nowadays would not even make it, like you say, even if a band was to stand up. It's very unlikely that they'd make it. They may make it up to a certain point through natural talent or gift or whatever, but it's very unlikely that they'd actually come to the A-list. They may be a cult-known band or whatever. And of course, don't forget that this is a perfect example, what we're talking about now, of exactly what we said about how the conspiracy movement is about to be co-opted. The masters, the controllers, understood what rock and roll was. Rock and roll, in its original expression, was about freedom. It was about independence, and it was about individuality, and it was about absolute iconoclasm to the status quo. So what did they do? They realized you can't suppress it because suppressing, that's useless. That's exactly what empowers it, because it just comes out of another area, even stronger and more strong in every sense of the word. It has more stamina. It has more constitution. So what do? You create the whole broken plaster scenario again. They co-opt that, and they put before you their own people's champions, their own bands, their own compromised people. Many of the blonde women, for instance, are part of satanic networks. They're part of these different projects of child abduction, and they have these unofficial families, you see, who breed these people so that later on when they put them in front of you as the girl next door, the guy next door, we believe it, but in fact, you see, there's a whole other truth behind that that's slowly coming to light. It ties into a lot of things that have been whistleblown in movies about children being swapped at birth and the mother being given children that are not their own. And then there's also official families. We know from the work of the mind control people who've blown the whistle that certain families even exist, and these are not just right-wing Nazi families. These are people even within the Christian movement, clergymen, all sorts of people from all sorts of different backgrounds who sell their children into these cults, who sell their children into these different satanic cults, so that later on they can be groomed, and if they happen to look a certain way, if they have a certain kind of numerology or astrology connected to them, if they happen to be good performers or good dancers, you see, the Dionysian cult will check all these people out, and if they do their work, then they'll start insinuating these people through the media, through Penthouse magazine, through Playboy, and now they don't even need to do that. They can just put them straight on the television through MTV and through all of this other bullshit. You don't know who wrote the songs. You don't know who's creating the videos. These $1 million videos full of Dionysian symbolism. You're not going to know that unless you've studied the occult, unless you've studied all of this stuff, the strange key phrases that they use in the lyrics and so on and so forth, stuff I've gone into for years and years and years. And all of this is out there, and then, of course, what happens is you start identifying with that. These become the new people's champions, the models for the young, and this goes on. And so the real voices, the people who are, maybe trying to teach you some truth through the rock and heavy metal movement, they are not listened to properly. Their lyrics are not explored. Their secrets are not explored. And, of course, as we know, it's complicated because a lot of the bands in metal, even the good guys, tend to use a sort of a darker imagery, what might put people off, and then they think, oh, these guys are involved as well just because they happen to be wearing black or using the pentagram. So you have to be very discerning, like I said in the DVD. Not all the people who just happen to use a kind of a countercultural imagery are negative. Listen to their lyrics. Check out their music. Listen to the mastery of what they're doing. And that they'll also be warning you against the other kind of people who come to you in a much more mainstream way and a higher budget way. These are the ones you really have to watch. So it's a long story. It's a whole subject that needs to be treated individually. One of the great books that I recommended, we even had clips from Alex Constantine. I always tell people who are interested in this particular area to pick up Alex Constantine's book, The Covert War Against Rock, that talks about this campaign of assassinations against Jimi Hendrix and against Brian Jones and these other people and Jim Morrison and whatnot, and Bob Marley, you see. He's written on this. This is all officially documented. We know from insiders that these kinds of hit squads existed. It still goes on today. These secret satanic cults I talked about that moved to England have not gone away anywhere. They're still in business today. They're still operating large assassination campaigns. They're still involved in ritual murder and ritual abduction, things that America still has to wake up to realize how come there's a federal report for lost, stolen knives and forks, and for cutlery, and for cars, but there's none for abducted children. You know, is there a reason why that might be? You know, across the different states of America, there's no database for the abductions of children. Yeah, maybe there's a reason for that, you know. So all of the sorts of things that we dabble in and we go into, you know. In the closing moments of the show, before we finish, Josh, if you allow me to actually mention a couple of great videos and uploads that I'd like for people to check out.
Well, we're coming on a break here, Michael. Can you stay one more segment with us?
Yeah.
Can you stay one more segment with us? Okay. All right, we're coming on.
No problem.
And well, I have to do 4 hours now, so we got one more hour. But I want to keep Michael one more segment. I didn't want to keep him all day just because he has a life to go live. But I just wanted to do one more segment. We're coming into the 4th hour, right around the corner. We'll keep Michael with us for the big segment at the top of the hour. And there's some other things I want to get his take on. We'll let him give you some links to some other things you need to go check out. And we'll be right back, right around the corner. Michael Tsarion joins us today on the Global Reality 4th hour around the corner. Stay with us. Final segment with our guest, Michael Tsarion, today. I want to thank you for staying one extra segment with us today for the show. And we're going to get into quite a bit here, just the final segment here of the broadcast today. Stay late with us. I want to thank you so much for being here with us. Architectsofcontrol.com is the website, as well as michaeltsarion.com. And Michael, go ahead and give out those links and the information that you want to give out there before the break.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'll just turn that on. Okay, well, on the Michael Tsarion website, there's a button with Next. Go to the Next, and then there's my articles there that very much will help people have a thorough understanding of what we were talking about earlier about this Fabian infiltration, the weapons of mass destruction found article, and then there's one there also on the occult history of Ireland, which is from my earlier researches, you see, that got me into this. But then also, if you go to the forum, go back to the main page of Michael Tsarion, click on the forum, and go to the War on You page, and there's lots of links there. But specifically want to address Ralph Epperson's work. It's a video. It's up on YouTube or Google called America Secret Destiny, America's Secret Destiny. So you can go to the Michael Tsarion website, go into the forum, go to the War on You page, and scroll down till you see the Epperson, or just go straight to YouTube and Google and put in Ralph Epperson, America's Secret Destiny. Same thing applies to Stan Monteith. He has a thing there called the Brotherhood of Darkness. These are absolutely essential, you know, both for beginners and for the more seasoned. This is really the meat. These are the great scholars, you know, the people who have my mentors as well. I've been on Dr. Monteith's show myself several times. And then Dr. John Coleman, he has a upload there called Wake Up America, which is about 13-part YouTube. And before they take this stuff down, you know, my God, get on there, watch it, try to download it, you know, bookmark these, send them to your friends, because as we talked about earlier on, it's no good just bashing the problem. Let's also give the solution. So when we said there's a lot of rubbish out there and there's a lot of stuff that people need to use discernment with and they need a filtration process, well, I've already done that for people. So if they come to my forum, if they come to my website, you know, we've got these links for people to check out these sources. Very, very important there. And then, of course, the Brotherhood of the Bell. You can just type that straight into Google or YouTube, or come to my forum. It's linked to the War on You page. So there's my 2 articles there under Next, and then these various great presentations by these other great scholars that are linked to my forum, or you can just go straight to Google and YouTube and put these names in: Ralph Epperson, Stan Monteith, Dr. Stan Monteith, and Dr. John Coleman, and check out those, because again, we can save you the time, we can save you the energy. If you just go to these people who've done incredible research lasting generations, decades, you know, it'll save you a lot of problems later when either this stuff becomes more popcorn-like, or you have a lot of other people who are new kids on the block who don't really know a lot of the depth, and then it leaves you kind of stranded and gives you more questions than answers. These guys answer the questions. They don't provide more questions than answers, although that's a good thing too in a way. But to the real big issues that are going on in our world, behind the political, behind the legal, behind the whole question of sovereignty, behind the question of the Constitution and the various forms of colonialization we were talking about earlier, there are certain scholars that people need to know about, I always mention their names, and they're linked directly to my forum and to the other links pages that we provide on our websites.
And
so thanks, Josh, for let me do that.
Oh, no problem at all. I mean, that's what we're here to do. I mean, we have to get this information out. People don't know where the information is. How are they going to know to go find it? I mean, this is what we're here to do, is provide the information to people. That's the most important thing. But I wanted to, in the final segment here of the broadcast with Michael, I want to thank you for staying longer with us today. One of the things that I want to get your take on, because you did touch on this in the film, and also I think it's just important with what we're seeing happen here. One of the things that you talked about was, the idea of, oh, well, we have Columbine, or we have, Virginia Tech, and we have these shootings, and oh, it's such a tragedy, and oh, woe is me, and look at this. But then we have things like are going over in the Gaza right now with Israel and the Gaza Strip, and I'm looking around me, Michael, right now, and seeing all my fellow Americans just completely apathetic to this situation. They don't even know why they should be concerned with it, and they don't care because they think it would never come to America. They think it would never come home to them. And but it's a tragedy when some kid is kidnapped and killed. And yes, yeah, that's sad. But I mean, as you stated, Michael, I mean, we have all these atrocities around the world that people are being programmed to just turn a blind eye to.
Yeah, that's true. The apathy has been creeping in since the advent of television, and of course the constant daily assault of disinformation. What people have to realize is that it's already in America. America is already funding, breaking its own back to fund Israel, to pour money into different organizations. They funded Al-Qaeda. They funded the various terrorist organizations, same as Britain. It's not only in America. America is pretty much the cause of it, not Americans, but the secret government that rules from America that's now ensconced in your country, this particular oligarchy we seek to expose. And also the second thing that people need to realize is that absolutely you can do something about it. Apathy creeps in because people are infused with a feeling that they're small, they're insignificant, they have no power, and that they can't do anything about it. Quite the contrary. You still have enough democracy to do that, but you needn't do it through the traditional legal means. You can do it through other means. You can do it through legal empowerment. You can do it through the media. You can do it through exposing who these people are. You can do it through, Freedom of Information Acts and through journalism and like shows like yourself. You can feed information to people like yourself. The listeners need to realize that you can email and you can send information to radio show hosts that will absolutely get it disseminated. You can do that yourself on the web. I've always insisted that work like myself is so much collaborative. So much of the stuff that I work with is people who've been sending it to me from all over the world, and I try to make it public on my websites, so that the more and more and more people, you see, who come to my websites and learn stuff or pick up a DVD or so, whatever, these people are also benefiting from all the collaborative stuff that's been sent to me, from other people that, I'm very grateful for. So, because there's pieces of this all over the world. There's pieces of this. I get incredible stuff sent to me from Bulgaria. I get incredible stuff sent to me from Australia, about the geometry and the designs. And you're quite right. In the DVD Architecture Control, we did go into a bunch of these things regarding the child murder, the assassinations, and the kind of school shootings. One, because it's a terrible thing, of course, but more importantly is that I wanted to again focus in people's attention on the fact that when these things happen, they can, when it comes on television, they need to observe all the subtextual occult symbolism that comes along in the broadcast of these particular traumas. First of all, I always alert people to the fact that they are traumatizing you through this stuff. When you see children murdering their parents or murdering school friends, that hits a certain, can I call it chakra, or perhaps in more modern parlance, it hits a certain part of the brain. It hits a particular circuitry in your brain that traumatizes the hell out of you. We don't like to see those things. They're very abnormal. First of all, they're abnormal. They're actually created. There's many people who have bad upbringings, but they don't go around murdering people. So we got to realize this is all made for TV. They're letting you know that it's made for TV by some of the symbolism that they incorporate into these reportage. This is, again, extremely important for people, because remember, if you blow the whistle in this, and if you show some of the occult permutations in this, in the killings of the Yorkshire Ripper and Dr. Shipman, you see, and the various killings like Columbine, and then the Virginia Tech murders and all. And if you keep tracking it and keep up to date with these things, very soon you're going to expose it what it is. Even the Wacos and all these other injustices. You need to listen to the alternative press, because they're going to reveal some of this alternative stuff for you, and that will in effect stop it. The more people that know about these rituals and how they're done, look at the elections. When you see a semicircular solar disk of light at the back of the podium from which each person emerges. Obama, Palin, and that other creature, what is his name, McCain. Here's the solar heroes, the people's champions, appearing And behind them, literally, is not just a halo or a bit of light, but a semicircular dome, the eye of light, you know, the eye of Aton, from which they're each emerging down this phallic podium. Yeah, wake up, discover the symbolism. Why are all the Republicans wearing red and the Democrats wearing blue? You know, what the hell is going on here? Look at the symbolism in the logos and the emblems and get up to speed on where they came from. It's so fascinating. It's not something to be jaded about or afraid of or paranoid about. It's about a new discovery in our societies today of coming up to speed on this stuff. It's an age of awakening. You can either be part of it or you can't be a part of it. But I don't insist that people get into this. Take a page out of the secret society rhetoric. Just like I was telling you about the final scenes in the Brotherhood of the Bell. He's absolutely right. They don't leave you any choice. You're either for them or you're against them. They put you on the outside. So it's a choice that's already been made for you. It's either the black squares of ignorance or the white squares of knowledge. They have made the choice for you. You don't have a say. The only say that you do have is that I refuse to have ignorance. I'm going to have knowledge. And like I say in my work, let's start taking that light and that they have shone brightly in our eyes, you know, totally blinding us. A kind of blindness that actually comes from light, which is a very strange Luciferian principle that people need to be up to speed on, which I've written about. Let's try to do the same thing for them. Let's turn the light that they say they love back onto them to show up who they really are, you see. This kind of light, we're in the age for that to happen right now. Pluto is in Capricorn. You know, the age of awakening is upon us. The Holy Spirit is very much close to us, which is helping us to fall in love with the word no, to help us shine the light back onto these creatures to show exactly what they're made of, so that we don't see just the facade, you know, but we see who they really are. And of course, that's difficult for people who've just begun, so then that's why I always emphasize studying the movies. I mean, these James Bond movies are fantastic to watch. Old shows from the 60s and 50s, moving up into the modern age, into the high-tech movies that we have now, the big-budget films, you know, the Star Treks, like you said. There's so much symbolism in there that to be decoded. And this is a fascinating study because nothing in the negative space of these movies is put there by accident. Nothing that they say is merely one literal interpretation. All sorts of this symbol literacy has to become known, and what better way to do it than to do it through the, you know, observation of what's coming across in the media. In 2006 or whatever it was when we uploaded the Brown Hall gave me permission to upload the talk I did at ConspiracyCon called the Subversive Use of Sacred Symbolism in Media. That is probably one of the most watched, and it's also the one I've got so much feedback from people saying, well, this one really clicks with them. This is the one that really, you know, helped them really get an understanding on their personal lives of what's going on, looking at the magazines, looking at the ad copy, looking at the TV graphics, then studying the movies, studying cartoon time, you see, and the Nickelodeon, and all of the different things, even comic books, all the rest of it. This is what people started to report back to me. It was the same thing with the DVD I released. There's a multi-hour length expose on exactly the same subject with the same title, Subversive Use of Sacred Symbolism in the Media. Again, that was, I think it's so far, it's one of the most sold of the DVDs in the Origins and Oracles collection. So again, this one, you know, is a grassroots thing where people start to see this. The more people get aware of this, what happens? Well, you have greater immunity, so it starts affecting you less. When you realize what toxins are coming into your home, you block it. You don't let it come in. The same thing we do with spam mail, the same thing we do with electronic viruses, we block it. Well, this is exactly what happens to happen on a psychic level, and once you start blocking it, hey, you've already won. It doesn't matter how much evil they want to manufacture for you. It doesn't matter how much evil and toxic viruses they want to create. It doesn't matter what kind of sorcery they want to, you know, pump into our minds. If your mind is savvy to it and closed to it, they have lost. This is the whole point. You can't go and stop them doing it because, as I said in the Architects of Control DVD at the end, they have the right to be doing what they're doing. You can't placard them. You cannot say, stop what you're doing, because each human being has the choice to be good or evil. All you have the choice to do is stop buying into what they're doing and arming yourself up with the spiritual and the moral tools, you see, to prevent this toxic garbage from coming through on all of its levels. We're just teachers signposts to try and tell you what that psychic garbage is, what to be aware of, and we leave the rest to you. We're not interfering with your private areas of worship. We're not interfering with your private allegiances, you see. That's all your own business. It's totally private area.
Hey,
so
Mike,
what we are saying is...
Have you watched the original Conan the Barbarian film recently?
I was actually going to mention that earlier myself because that's one of the movies that I use to teach the kids, and I've used it many times as an examples of how this subtextual stuff works. Incredible movie, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just the reptilian symbology, I mean, all of it. I mean, there's just more. I'd really love to see that in your feature film, but yeah, I'm sorry, please continue.
Well, we try to do that, and of course I do that in the subversive use of sacred symbolism DVDs is a huge subject, and it's something that no one person by themselves can do because it's so vast. And of course, there's new stuff coming out all the time. I've done various radio interviews on that, on the symbolism subject, and I'm glad to see that a lot of people are, taking it seriously and are doing other great exposés of this kind of thing. This is what needs to happen. Again, not one person is not going to be able to handle all of that media stuff. I just point out some of the things that I've noticed, the different kind of occult symbolism, the use of astrology, the depiction of women, the depiction of animals, how horror films are created, you see. So again, my idea is don't turn it off. Don't knee-jerk reaction to it. Examine scientifically what's in it. In exactly the same way that you have to do in school when you're learning electronics or anything else, you have to apply your mind to it. Look at it as a particular phenomenon that requires your study so that you become up to speed on it. Because in doing that, you also become immune to any of these mental viruses that are being put forward. And remember, these viruses affect you sexually. They affect your mind. They affect your limbic region. They have the potential of creating people to be suicidal, to be anorexic, to be bulimic, to be murderers, to be not just malcontented, but absolutely malefactors, people who will literally go out, you see, and break the law and commit crimes and harm the dignity of other people, you see. So, like you said, the Parallax View and some of these other great movies that we've talked about that really go into this in great depth. Brotherhood of the Bell, and so many others I could mention.
We're coming to the break here, Michael. I want to thank you so much for coming on with us, my friend, and definitely look forward to having you on again in the future.
And let me know when your own DVD is out. I want to help promote that, and watch it myself. I'm looking forward to it.
All right,
and
Michael.
Thanks again for the time.
Absolutely, and it's always an honor and a pleasure to have him on. Michael Tsarion, ladies and gentlemen, architectsofcontrol.com. We'll take a break, come back, and we'll get into a lot more news and information on the other side. This is the Global Reality. Stay with us. Back here with you on the Global Reality Wednesday edition of the show. I want to thank Michael Tsarion for coming on with us, man. I tell you what, it's like the fourth or fifth time we had Michael Tsarion on with us, and boy, it's always just so great to have him on, and it just gets better and better, and that was just an amazing show. It's amazing for me, it's amazing for me to do it, believe me. I'm just as much in awe and enjoying the show as you guys are, believe me. I'm just really the the sort of referee in all of it. I sort of just sit here and let him go, and he has another show to do in about an hour, and he stayed with us for 3 hours and 15 minutes. He has another hour. I mean, the guy's a machine, man. He just doesn't stop. But I want to thank him again. Get his DVD, The Architects of Control, at architectsofcontrol.com. It really is a great film, and I can't wait to see more of them. But yeah, I mean, lots of great info, and we did cover a lot of stuff today, and we did sort of go over some things. There was, and we mentioned he wants to see my DVD when it's out, The Secret Right. And you know what? Some mentioned this in the chat room. Some of this information that's going to be in this film that is, even people like Michael Tsarion don't know about. You got to understand, some of this information has been kept so hidden because of, obviously it exposes people like Michael Tsarion we're talking about, these infiltrators, these people who've come into movements to co-opt them, and that's really even the case. I mean, he referenced Dr. Stanley Monteith, who's the Council for National Policy member. Of course, I didn't say anything, but once the film is out, I think we'll definitely have Michael back on to see what he thinks about the film, to give his take on that, because a lot of this information. I mean, some of this information is 20 plus years old in some cases, but that's how much it's been hidden within the realm and scope of the research community. So, I mean, this is why this film is so important. So, if you want to support us, we're having a fundraiser right now, a final fundraiser we're having for the film. It's up at theglobalreality.com, and it's also on myspace.com/Global Reality Show. And we're trying to raise the final cash we need to get the rest of the things for the film and whatnot. But it's a testament. It's really going to be groundbreaking. These films and some of the clips. I was talking to Michael Vale the other night. We're showing him some of the descriptions of some of the clips that we're getting. It's just mind blowing stuff of some of these mainstream news sources that we're getting for the film, and all this information's there. But to me, one of the testament of this film that I'm making is the fact that it really, a lot of us have all been guilty of not doing our own research and just taking what other people say as being all there is to know out there. That to me is, aside from the fact that we're exposing this secretive group, aside from the fact we're exposing that they're controlled by the Vatican and they control the military-industrial complex and religions and the Patriot movement, and they were set up by the Fabian socialists, and all this information is going to be in the film. Aside from that, really, it's a testament to the fact that of the importance of doing your own research and finding out this stuff for yourself, because if you don't, you know, stuff like this and not finding out about these groups is going to happen. And, you know, that's one of the things that we've discovered with this film is that, you know, you go back to the Moonies. And the Reverend Sun Myung Moon has been the biggest, I'm doing all the editing. Editing, voiceovers, music. I'm even performing the music, composing the music, everything I'm doing. I'm doing it all. So, I mean, editing, mastering, audio mastering, DVD authoring. I'm a one-trick pony. I'm a one-man show over here. I'm doing it all. I don't have a team of people working on this film. I got myself, and that's it, and I got nobody else. So, so be it. That's, you know, this is how it is. But, no, you know, you go back to the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, and you go back to, you know, he's been the largest funder of the Republican Party for the past 30 years. Well, this was a guy that was called a cult leader by people like Jerry Falwell. He was sent up the river for tax evasion by the Reagan Justice Department. Then he turns around, buys was it the Washington Post or the Washington, one of those newspapers, and the Washington Times. And then, of course, here's Jerry Falwell praising him, taking $1.5 million in funding from him. Tim and Beverly LaHaye took millions of dollars in funding from him. Reagan shaking his hand, calling his paper the most conservative newspaper there is. Then what I've uncovered and what I've found out and what I didn't find out through other sources that I did research on is that these cults, and it sort of led down that path of realizing that from Michael Tsarion's film, was that these cults, I mean, you go back to Jonestown, most all of them are always CIA controlled and operated cults. I have my doubts about Waco. I know that's not an important, I mean, not a you know, a popular belief to have. I have my doubts about whether that Waco itself wasn't a CIA created cult, and that David Koresh wasn't a CIA asset from the beginning. I mean, seriously. But what you start to find out is that, you know, these groups like the Council for National Policy are CIA fronts that are set up to start what appear to be grassroots movements, rope people in to get people to follow them, so that way when, you know, a regular individual tries to start their own grassroots movement, well, there's already one there. And so it's just easier for them to go, you know, why would you want to start your own 9/11 Truth movement if there's already a 9/11 Truth movement? You can just go join up and become a meetup group of, you see? Same thing. Why would you want to start a gun rights group when there's already, you know, the NRA or Gun Owners of America or something like that you could just go easily join? You see, so you know, these are the same type of things over and over and over again. Why would you want to go start an anti-RFID club or group when there's already one there? You can just as easily go join, or, you know, an anti-immigration group or illegal immigration group or something of that nature. So this is why these groups have been started. And this is why you saw, you know, the Moonies and the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, you know, be given all these awards at the State Department. He's had, you know, all of these connections at the highest levels of government, and he's just allowed to operate with no one even, you know, asking or even knowing where all his money ever came from or how he got all of his money or where he amassed this vast amount of wealth. It's a mystery. Well, it's not a mystery to me. I know where he got it all. He got it from his years of running his CIA cult. And that's what it is. All these cults, all these leaders, they're all started and they're all created and they're all CIA assets. And you know, the origins of the CMP go back 40, 50 years. General Major John K. Singleton, who was involved in the Iran-Contra affair. I mean, this guy was one of the founding members of the CIA, founding member of the Western Goals Foundation and the World Anti-Communist League. You know, Iran-Contra, on and on and on, 33rd Degree Mason, Knights of Malta. You know, so you start to find out that these groups were created to, you know, stop any grassroots movements from popping up. And so, you know, that the whole point of it is that there are more levels here than any of us really even know about. We're going to take a break, come back, final half hour around the corner. We'll get into a lot of news and information. You want to join us, we'll open up the phone lines as well. This is The Global Reality. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Stay with us.